Hello, and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes, bringing you another Old Man Orange Presents Via VHS episode. One of them from the rarities vault that we have from back in the day that just never got put out. So come join us for another fun-filled retro movie review. Let's jump on in.
So what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Via VHS. This is a special episode. This is something brand new, something different. If you want to call it a historic moment in podcasting, I think it's fair. Not this podcast, just podcasting in general. I think this is a big moment. But this is the first of the much teased nostalgia episodes where we kind of branch off talking about just movies and doing the rewind review and talk about, adjacent pop culture items, I guess is the best way to say it. So we're going to be dabbling in this episode into video games a little bit. I thought a good place to start with these nostalgia episodes would be look back at the Nintendo 64 and kind of reminisce about maybe the greatest game system of all time. I don't know. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But if you watch the Super Mario Brothers episode, I thought it was apt if we're talking about video game movies, which have the two same people back to talk about video games. Spencer, because he's here every week. I can't get rid of him. Spencer, how you doing?
I just show up, you know what I mean? I'm just that guy. It's like, hey, I need a couch to stay on, so... Yeah.
I turn on Skype and you're just there. Like I was actually going to talk to Ryan and you're already here.
I was already there. I was just like, I was on. I was good to go. I'm set. I already have my list made. You don't have to even question it.
I didn't even tell you. About
I just start going through like a Rolodex. I'm like, hold on, I got one of those lists here. Like I just pulled like the most old man reference.
Wait, that's Walter Hill. Right? That's Walter Hill list. That's my that's my Groucho Marx list.
Whenever we get there, guys, don't worry. Got my Laurel and Hardy set there too, so looking at you, Ryan.
Vic Van Dyke list. No, not so. On
it. Oh man. Well, also Ryan joining us again 2 weeks in a row. I guess it's going to be the same thing. I turn on Skype, you're there. This actually
jump scare just pops up.
Yeah. So this will be the third episode in a row. Technically, we've been together because we did Via VHS, and then as fate would have it, we review Super Mario Brothers, and then there's like, oh hey, by the way, here's this director's cut we threw up on the internet like 2 days later. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, well shit, we have to do that too. And then now we're talking about Nintendo 64 games. So just awesome.
It's a Mario Party fest of all kinds.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad you're here though.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, this is the premise of this episode. Simple. I said we'll just pick our top 5 Nintendo 64 games because I feel like Nintendo 64, like compared to some of the other things we'll talk about, this won't always be a list thing. These nostalgia episodes, it won't be always top 5 this or top 10 that. But this one, I feel like it needed a little bit of structure because it could just go so many different places. There's so many types of games. So I felt like if we do a top 5, it'll be a way for us to kind of break down, what we loved about the system. And I think we're on the same page. I never really said this, but we're doing top 5 favorite, right?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of, the way that I sort of structured my list is a little bit different, I guess. I have, not to be that guy, it's like, well, guys, I know that was the game plan, but I thought that I would try something different here, just saying. But, no, I thought that I was like, I'm going to kind of go with more because the 64 is one of those systems that, like, generally, the top 5 best games, like the realistic top 5 best games for the N64, you could probably say that to just about any gamer on the planet, and no one's really going to argue them because this system's one of the very few systems that's like super defined on like kind of what the best games are. It's not like you're looking at PlayStation or Sega Genesis or something like that where it's like, everybody's top 10 list could be completely different and not even have too many games that even cross over in a sense. Like they could be full on, looks like 2 completely different consoles even. But the 64 is like one of those ones, like it would be kind of hard pressed to actually find like 2 legitimate like top like 10 lists and not have like at least like 7 of the games cross over.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why I want to do favorites because, we're still kind of doing that get to know me thing on the Via VHS, the rewind review stuff. And so I thought if we do the, favorite games, it might change a little bit. Because I know my list, I mean, you have your 2 or 3 that are like, everybody knows it's the top 3. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about best games. Or, not everybody knows, but it's like kind of how Godfather 2 is always at the top of any list when talking about best movies. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing with Nintendo 64. It's, the same 2 or 3 games are always at the top. But if you're talking about favorite games, things get a little different.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think also because, when you think N64, I mean, that almost goes so hand in hand with like VHS and that kind of era. I mean, N64, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, like PlayStation, it's like those things. It's like you go into the store, you're going to rent a movie, it's Friday night, you're going to rent a movie, you're going to rent a game, you're going to hang off your buds, you're going to get like a pizza, get some Surge. You know what I mean? Just get hopped up. Yeah.
I literally have my Surge can beside my Nintendo 64 up here. Oh, well. So you're on the right track.
No, I thought I was going to be able to find... I thought I was going to... I have a Surge pencil somewhere around here, but instead I have a Lex
Surge
Luger WCW pencil right next to me.
Surge always just reminded me of like a parody of a soda in The Simpsons. Like it's a made-up brand for like a cartoon or Ren and Stimpy or something,
It really does.
All, it should be.
Yeah.
I hate to get off track here. I can't stop. One of the biggest themes of the show is I cannot stop. I cannot get over how Spencer's house is a museum to 90s pop culture obscurity. I can't stop.
Oh, you haven't seen the other side of the room.
Yeah, I know. Wes only gets to see one sector. It's like a 2D world for him.
It's what I hear about. It's not what I see. It's about, Air Force One fanny packs, Devil's Advocate T-shirts.
Queen Amidala Pepsis.
Queen Amidala Pepsi cans, Lex Luger pencils. Surge pencils.
The Batman and Robin Batmobile in there somewhere.
Yeah, I got that. There's all kinds of stuff. It's like that We Have Nintendo sign from Tahoe.
And old ass Budweiser cans full with water.
Yeah, still sealed too. Ready for fire consumption of 1972.
You can't forget that Wishbone plushie from PBS's Wishbone. Yeah.
Gotta love Wishbone. That was where it was at. It was like, I get old classic tales. Plus, there's a dog to explain them to me. Because as a '90s kid, we needed that dog in there. Teachers aren't very good. What's a better explainer than a teacher? Is a dog.
I wish Wishbone went on so long they eventually get to like Chuck Palahniuk books.
Just kind of kept going on. Well, I remember, this sounds so weird. I know we're all like off topic, but since you mentioned Wishbone, I remember like 3 or 4 years ago on Twitter, there was one of those hashtags that popped up that said Wishbone died. And I was like, the fuck? Like, all I thought was like, how old was that dog? And it turned out it was some stupid, like, well, I don't know, I'm not gonna say stupid. Maybe he's a very nice person, but it wasn't the dog, so I felt like he was misusing that name. But it was like some like kiddie rapper, so I don't know, some teen idol, somebody like that. I mean, once again, I don't know who it was, but when I saw that it wasn't the dog, it really bothered me. It was like, you shouldn't be just speaking that dog's name out like that. You know what I mean? That's a sacred icon. It's an American icon right there. But that's all I thought, though. I was like, dude, that dog was like 30-something years old. Like, I was doing the math and everything, trying to figure out. So when the show came out in like 1993 or 4, like that dog had to have been like, what, probably 4 or 5 years by that point, because he's trained and all that kind of shit. So I'm like, oh shit, that dog's breaching 30. I'm like, that can't be right. He's like a Guinness Book World Record dog. But then again, it's the Wishbone dog, so it makes sense.
Working keeps you young.
Then it turned out it just wasn't. Definitely. It was just one of those ones, like, that's like when you pull it, it's like, hey, old man, it's not a dog. He's a pop icon. It's like, dog's beyond a pop icon. It's a historical figure. You know what I mean? They have statues like him, just like Stalin had statues of him. Well, where they got these statues at? Well, I don't know, but I got a plushie behind me, so I guess that counts. Yeah. You see a plushie of Stalin back there? No, you don't. You see one of Wishbone.
This episode is brought to you by Surge and Wishbone.
90s field is what we are. 90s educated. Yeah. 90s field.
90s educated. 90s was great. I think that's why I feel so fondly of the 64 because damn, all the 90s were good. The late 90s were damn good, I thought. Mm-hmm. Some people will prefer the early 90s. I'm about the late 90s a little bit.
Late 90s is attitude era to its fullest. I don't mean that just with wrestling, but that's just like where attitude of all kind starts really coming together. You know.
I agree.
I think that's also where we started getting that Rice Krispies ad, where it's just like their catchphrase for a little while was, "Want some Rice Krispies? Sure." Psych! And pulling it away, like, because fuck you, you're poor. There's too much to fit onto a box.
Rice Krispies.
We're too poor for Rice Krispies when we got a Nintendo 64.
It goes along with like that. I was supposed to say Golden Grams, like grandma commercial or whatever the heck they have.
There was like a couple. There was always like the fucking elderly coming in trying to steal our fucking gold. It's like a kindly old man for Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Like, oh, hi, kids. Want some Cinnamon Toast Crunch? You know, like, it was just like, what? Just come into my magical kitchen. Like, no, I'm good. You can just slide the bowl over here.
I mean, like, I want the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I don't want to be anywhere near you in your creepy area.
I want it with no strings attached, if you get what I mean. So.
Yeah.
I want the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I also want you to stay away from my Lucky Charms. So if we could just make that happen, that'd be great.
Yeah, or it's about kids stealing shit from, like, there's the rabbit, there's Lucky Charms, you know? There's like, there's the fucking Irishman, take his shit!
Yeah, or the poor rabbit. The rabbit literally makes this fucking cereal, and kids are like, you don't deserve it, old man! You know, tricks are for kids! Get out of here, Liam Neeson!
Wasn't there like a didn't Aaron Paul have a not Pop-Tarts? What was that ugly cereal that looks just like dehydrated popcorn or something?
I don't even know.
Corn Pops.
Pops? Yeah.
Yeah, Corn Pops.
Oh, Corn Pops. He did a thing for Corn Pops?
Yeah, he did a commercial in the super 90s. I can't remember. I think he's got like there's an attitude with his parents or something, and yeah.
That's probably one of those ones, if I went back and watched it, I would have been like, oh shit, I remember that commercial, but I would never have put two and two together. That was, him. It's like that Jack Black commercial of like, Pitfall. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I know that's like 70s, not like I saw that when that came out, but
Well, I highly recommend. There's a YouTube channel called. Well, there's several of them that do this, but the one I bounce into the most is Dave's Archives, and he just goes, I guess, to thrift stores and finds, things that were actually taped off television, and he puts the commercials onto YouTube. And you can sit there and watch like an hour worth of 1997 commercials, which sounds horrible to some people, but to me, it's amazing.
Well, isn't that the weirdest thing? Is you will sit, if someone says, hey, here's like some 1995 commercials, you would sit down and watch that. But if a commercial came on TV right now, you'd be like, what, you too cheap to fucking pay for like the premium version? I ain't watching this shit. Like,
Yeah.
who do I need to send $7.99 to? Oh,
my
Tubi?
God.
You don't want my money? Well, screw you. I'm not using you then.
A commercial comes on, like if my kid's watching something on YouTube, like Super Simple Songs, and they'll just break in with an ad, and he doesn't know what to do. He's like, what is this? I was just so accustomed to it. I learned to talk by commercials, probably. I remember some of my first words were like Hardee's, Honda, Pepsi. Like those were like some of my first words, which is terrible.
Which is exactly what they want.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Every so often, there's also, because a lot of like commercials in the 90s that were aimed at kids were aimed at like, aren't your parents fucking lame? And I guess they still have that to some extent if you look long enough. But I feel the 90s really just beat it over the head, because there was a game called Don't Wake Daddy. I remember the theme says like, Don't Wake Daddy. It's like,
this was an amazing commercial.
It was a board game, and if you land, you have like a certain timer, and like a little like plastic dad who like looks like he's having non-flashbacks wakes up like Saigon, and then like, you have to just get to a certain area before the timer goes up, and he pops up, and he would just get this blood-curdling scream.
Yeah. Well, these kids don't know what Dad's just probably pulled a 12-hour shift down at the factory for the last 5 days straight because Billy couldn't fucking show up. because he had some concert he had to go to. So now Dad really just wants to get some sleep in, and God forbid the kid's gotta wake him up.
Don't Like Daddy by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's like that's the thing. That was like kids at that time period. You know, parents were still either like old hippies or like kind of like almost even like just old timey like post-war generation still, like that kind of like roll off. Where nowadays it's almost like someone's parents probably like, oh, well, what's your dad do? Well, I don't know. He listens to like Snoop Dogg and like Chris Cornell. Like, oh, he's actually probably more hardcore than any of the kids at school then.
Sorry, back 1 second.
Oh my God, that's funny.
We went too extreme for Ryan, but but that is kind of like the way it is, because I just think about like you look at like sort of like the music that kids are into nowadays. I'm like, God, they're into such soft stuff. It's not so hardcore like the '90s once was. You know, it's not like as heavy. It's not as loud. It's not as vulgar. It's not as abusive. It's not as intense.
Not as good.
No, it's not as good. It's slow and sad, and you know. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something missing. I don't know what I know. That's what like there's a point that every like adult gets to where like you just don't understand the youth anymore. I feel like it's when this is how you know you're old, is when you finally see, you know, like a boy and a girl that are like 12 or 13 years old, and this is how you know you're old, is when you look at the 13 or year old kids and you can't tell which one is a girl and which one's a guy of the boy and girl. Like, that's how I feel like. That's when you get to your senior citizen age. Like, I don't know, they all look the same. And I think everybody has, and like, if there was like, the World War II grandpas looking at like the 60s, 70s kids are like, the guy's got long hair, the girl's got long hair, I can't tell the difference between them. In the 80s, there's like the hair metal type thing going on. Like, and the girl's like, I can't tell the difference. And I feel like we get to that same point, and then it's like, oh, we're just old. That's just where we're at. We're at the point when you can't tell who's who anymore.
Was it y'all that I was talking to the other day, and I said that you're old when you're going to eat Taco Bell, then you have to see what you're doing later. Like, you had to, like, what's my plans later? Because I really want to eat this, but what do I have going on? Like, okay, I can swing that.
Where you got to start structuring your day based on, like, you're like, well, if I go do this, I got to have this follow-up of 6 hours pre-planned afterwards to balance it out. Yeah.
I'm still laughing at Saigon.
Sorry. I don't know what happened that whole time. I had to take my dog out for a second. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
Well, it's like that thing, like, anybody else get that, like, Apocalypse Now kind of, like, flashback where, like, you're laying in bed and all of a sudden you hear a helicopter coming by and you look up and the ceiling fan's on and you look out the window and you go, Saigon.
Right as the storm is playing?
Yeah, all of a sudden. I don't get Vietnam flashbacks. I literally just get, like, Apocalypse Now flashbacks.
Just Apocalypse Now. Oh, Lord. Baby Jesus. Damn.
It's like that kind of thing when you watch so many, like, Nam movies in a row that you start having dreams about Vietnam.
I've never had this problem.
Oh, you know what you need to do then? You need to sit down, you need to watch Platoon,
Everyone
Apocalypse
needs good
Now.
Nam nightmares. Yeah, we could all use a little bit of that.
Born on the 4th of July. Heaven and Hell. Hamburger Hill. Let me see. I can name off some more here.
Have a wheelchair fight with William Dafoe, yeah.
I think I've only had bad dreams about movies.
I'm not saying these are bad dreams. I'm just saying they're Nam dreams.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, that's fair. I think I've only had movie dreams a couple times. I mean, I was Baptist. I had too much shit going on to give me real bad dreams. Like, I didn't need, like, almost nothing. I had, like, dreams of the rapture and shit. It's like all kinds of, like, religious imagery, and the rapture's happening. There's, like, a volcano, and why is Moses here, and all kinds of shit like that. It was intense.
Moses is melting down those statues of Baal that you just created. Now he's going to make you drink them. That'd be the fear to have. He just broke those 10 commandments. Now he's going to go with some other ones. It makes you always wonder what was on that first list of 10 commandments that, like, God was like, oh, you know what? Maybe that one wasn't that great. Here, I'm going to write this other one in this time. Since you came all this way back, Moses, you know what I mean? Let's take number 7 out. I'm not too keen on that now that I've thought about it.
There's a typo on number 10 anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know you were chiseling it, and I should have caught it early, but yeah, God's got things going on.
A little bit.
But N64, you know, pretty much as a 90s kid's holy, you know, holy idol, the 64 would be it, sent in from Japan, you know, where
all the good stuff
good stuff's made from, you know what I mean? And, you know, growing up, this is the one thing I will say, though, because funny, because, like, I hear this sort of in hindsight and so on. I think just, or maybe from just, you know, either people that were older than us / people that are younger than us. But when I was a kid, the N64 was the number one most wanted system between, you know, the Saturn and the PlayStation. Like, it was by far, like, the PlayStation, I remember the PlayStation almost didn't even seem to catch on amongst people I knew till really about the time the PS2 kind of started to roll around. And then people started going like, oh, there's some great games for it and so on. But at first it was kind of like, that was always the system was like, oh, okay, it's kind of like the third wheel of you know, of the big three. You know, I mean, it was just like, it just didn't seem like PlayStation was that big of a deal. But the N64 was like, that was where it was at. You know, and, you know, nowadays people don't, there's sometimes a kind of a mix where some people either don't like the 64 a whole lot, or they go, oh, it just didn't do as good as, you know, the PlayStation and all this stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe combined, but, like, is the child on the playground, like, pull? The 64 was where it's at. Yeah, you mean the kids that aren't spending the money, they're just trying to ask their parents for it? Yeah, we're going to take those kids' opinions seriously.
Maybe this is where the very small age difference between us kicks in. Because I was the one weirdo who had 64 and all my friends had the PlayStation. I didn't fit in. I was like watching WCW and they're like, yo, you're lame, watch WWF. I'm like, yeah, but Sting. And they're like, no, you gotta watch WWF. And and then I also had the 64 and everybody else had PlayStation. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just kind of behind, but I've always been more fond of the 64 between the two. I like PlayStation.
Yeah, I love PlayStation.
PlayStation 2 is right there with 64 is my favorite. I love PlayStation 2. I logged a lot of hours into that one, but something about 64 just I had an NES, I had an SNES, but I'm so nostalgic about this one in particular. I'm not really sure why more so than the other two, but it's just that way.
Yeah. I was kind of like you, Wes. I had the 64, but I remember the PlayStation being kind of like, oh, there's that thing, whatever it is over there. And then right around like 95, 96, the PlayStation started getting a little bit more bigger. I want to say, I don't remember what years they came out, but I remember Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid being the two biggest ones that really brought people in, and then Resident Evil and all that.
Yeah. And as I said, like, that stuff was there and it kind of came along. And I also think, I mean, more people had PlayStations because they were like, in a sense, it was like half the price to get a PlayStation than it was a 64. Like, that was always I think that was the main thing, because I kind of realized, I think that's also the same reason why more kids had Genesis than Super Nintendos, is the parents are like, oh, well, it's $100 less, so I can actually get him 2 games for the same price as the Super Nintendo? Yeah, sure. He's getting the Genesis. He's going to be a Sega boy, yep. You know, and I think that's lots of times it, because I think that was the same thing at the PlayStation. I think parents kind of went to the store, they saw the 64, they saw the Saturn, they're like, he's definitely not getting that Saturn. Look back at the N64, went to the PlayStation, be like, yep, we can get the PlayStation, get a couple games, call it good, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's almost how more people kind of got him. It's just it's funny how just that little bit less of a price difference a lot of times can make such a humongous difference in like how many consoles get to people.
Well, since then, Nintendo's always had the cheaper system ever since GameCube.
Yeah. So ever since then, they're like, you know what? We're not making that mistake again. Look what happened. We let the PlayStation slip right underneath us, and then.
Which is weird because everyone, I want to say, if I remember out of that console war, I want to say PlayStation 1, but people look back on 64 more fondly. And that's just been sales and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Well, it's weird because it's like I see it like kind of some people like it's some ways, and then it just sort of depends. Like sales, definitely PlayStation was higher. But then there's, you know, certain people that like PlayStation more, certain people that like N64 more. I mean, I'll say overall, though, I know we're doing an N64 podcast, but PlayStation 1 was one of those systems that I didn't, you know, in the 90s, it was like, oh, cool, PlayStation 1. You know, it was neat, but it wasn't like, it didn't have that amazing feel that 64 had. But as time has gone on, the PlayStation 1 might be like right there in like my top 3 favorite systems of all time. Like, I like it that much. The games on there there's so much amazing titles on there They, you know, whether it be just Resident Evil and Final Fantasy and Parasite Eve and all that kind of stuff. That right there always kind of blows up. But we're not here to talk PlayStation. We're here to talk 64.
But no, I mean, that's part of the history of it. It really is. I mean, it was the first time, like, I mean, I had a Genesis for a little bit when I was a kid, and I switched over to Super Nintendo, but I always, like, looked at Nintendo was like Nike. It just was the leader in its field. You know what I mean? It was like number one. And then like when PlayStation came along, it was the first time it was like a chink in the armor. And you kind of like, man, I don't know if I'm playing the right system. I don't know if this is if like, you know, I've got the best stuff here. But I, for some reason, just liked it more. I really, well, we'll get into why I liked it more. But real quick, do you remember the first time you played 64, or like did you play it the first time when you got one, or like do y'all remember that?
I do. I remember it was at a Blockbuster, and there was a kiosk, and the Nintendo 64 kiosk wasn't right when you walked in. It was just kind of further down, like the hall, further down, like around like one of the ends of one of the shelves in the far corner of the place. And I remember just walking around checking out the video games, and this is like, I don't know, when you're a kid, I didn't really have things memorized and they're coming out. I just remember seeing ads and things for the Nintendo 64, not knowing when it was coming out. And then I just hear this weird noise, this like, what is that? And I go walk around the corner and I see that goofy looking control stick and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I run around the corner and I see Mario sleeping in the middle of the castle. My mind is just like blown, like, oh my God, there's no one around. And like I probably played the thing for like 10 minutes just trying to figure it out, just like amazed.
That's like the most naughty shit I've ever heard.
Very much
amazing.
Blockbuster.
Well, see, I played it at a Circuit City. Or see, that makes it feel even more 90s. So I don't know if it's like more 90s, but like those are both stores that don't exist anymore in history. But the same thing too is like you found that N64 controller, and it was just like you're playing Mario 64 and you're in a full 3D environment. I think that's the biggest thing that it's like it's hard to sort of explain that to someone, you know, who kind of just grew up in 3D games were just always there. Like, you know what I mean? But like I remember as a kid when I first saw a Sega CD, that blew my mind so much. Like, those games, to me, look so real. I was like, dude, we're there. We're there. My like, 5 and 6 year old self was like, dude, Jurassic Park on Sega CD, it's the most lifelike experience I've ever, seen. You know, you go back and play it now, and it's kind of cartoony, and so it's a great game still, but, like, when I like as a kid, that looked real. That looked as real as you can get, because I guess like you were coming from like regular Nintendo, Atari, and Sega Genesis graphics, and all of a sudden here's this game where you can almost, in a sense, fully spin around and look at kind of stuff. And that was like the same way that Mario 64 was. It was one of those ones where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in this full world. I can kind of control and go any which way I want. I mean, that literally was open world of the time. It's the kind of the same way that Tomb Raider kind of felt too on PlayStation, and even things like Twisted Metal. Like, like I can take this vehicle and drive in any direction I want in this arena. Like, just that alone blew you away for like 2 weeks straight. Like, you didn't even, that could have been the game. Like, it's like Mario 64. Like, as a kid first seeing that, like the castle was the game for like the first like weekend you played it. You didn't even have to jump into a painting yet.
It was amazing.
The castle is also one of the most amazing things about it. Like, yeah, they had like the little Lakutu, whatever his name is, pop it up, giving you hints, but it was just like, here's just like, it's going to be hard to die over here. Here's just a playground to figure out what to do. And when you figure it out, jump into a painting.
Yeah. Well,
rather than just this very like, use A to jump, use B to punch, stopping you mid game every 5 seconds.
I was intimidated by it at first because just the camera stuff was so different. Now it's just you do it so intuitively. You can go bounce from one system to another, and the way you move things around and look around is just it's so fluid, and you're just kind of used to it. But back then, it felt very foreign, but it was exciting, but it was kind of like, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say on what Ryan was saying is like, that's something that's, I always feels like it drives me up the wall in video games where they do that thing where like they have to give you that tutorial. And it's like you'll buy a mature rated game and they'll give you like that full on tutorial like you never played a game before. And it's honestly, somebody who's over the age of 17 this day and age and hasn't played a game is jumping in. Not saying that it could be somebody's first, just like Stan Lee said with comics and so on. You never know. But at the same time, I kind of like to say, like, you could kind of, I mean, I don't need to give us like the super handheld, but I loved how in older games, like they would almost teach you how to play the game by not telling you a single thing. I mean, granted, you had the manual, so that kind of told you what the buttons did, but a lot of those games are almost designed to be like, hey, you pick the controller up, you start playing around, you're going to figure it out, and just getting used to Mario and in the 3D world and all that kind of stuff. Because that was something I'll say, it's like the joysticks. It took me a long time to really get used to joysticks. Like I felt like I don't think I really got used to joysticks till almost about PS3 360 era. Like it took me like that long. Like I never felt that comfortable with it. I always still felt like I had that like old fashioned like, oh man, the D-pad, that's always my jam, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'll use a joystick if I have to, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know. Like, it was like PlayStation. I never used a joystick on PlayStation. Except for Ape Escape, like, it was like, nope, I'm D-pad all the way. And as I said, I don't think, it was probably 360 was the first time I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to use the joystick now. Maybe Xbox original, but.
Yeah, that was what changed it for me. That was the big thing for me. And I guess this will be a good way to transition into our first games. But the joystick, I think with 64, it's not the first console to do 3D games. It's not even the most recent one to do it at that point in time. But they flirted with this all the way back at Atari, and they're bringing it in now. So now it's like becoming mainstream, and you're bringing the joystick back, so it's kind of old and new at the same time. It kind of had this weird like retro vibe to it a little bit, even though it was like so advanced, I guess, in the terms of 1996. So but it was kind of fun and weird and different. But the racing games is what changed it for me, because first of all, the 3D environment added so much to that in general. I mean, just instead of the whole F-Zero thing where you kind of like go straight and then you back, or even the Super Mario,
Mario Kart,
Mario Kart. Yeah, it's just different on SNES to when you get to N64, and it's just so much more playable with the racing games.
Yeah, well, because you don't have like the Mode 7 kind of scrolling, or like on Sega Genesis, you got kind of like the Road Rash from EA, like that kind of style, or even like, Sega's way of doing it with like Space Harrier and so on. Like that was like the sort of proto 3D for those kind of race car games and so on. But right before we go into our, I know I felt like we've had like these kind of like little bumps in the road here, but I feel like this one's kind of one thing since we're doing the N64. Before we get to our list and everything, I just wanted to ask, because nowadays I see that there's a lot of mixed opinions on the N64 controller. Like there's some people out there that just, for some reason, they don't like that controller at all. But that, to me, I always thought was one of the most ingeniously made controllers out there. So much so that I don't think that we even really understood it when it kind of came out. I think that like as time gone on, you're like, oh, it has so much like options and playability. Like it's one, you play it Mario 64 style. You got your 3D control, standard controller there, but then you can put your hand over on the left side and you literally have a 6-button fight pad, which sadly they never really used any of that, because the only game that really was there was Mortal Kombat, and a couple other random ones. But like it was almost like it was designed to have Street Fighter on there, and whatever else Capcom would have made if they would have made those kind of games on the 64, and then to top it off, like sometimes how like some of the first person shooters like Turok and so on, I remember being there like, well, why is the control, like I'm looking with the joystick with my left hand, it makes it feel like I'm playing like a Southpaw style. Well, it's like what we were really supposed to do is put your right hand on the trigger and then put your left hand over there on the D-pad, and that would have made it like Halo controls. But, way before Halo, but nobody ever did. They just played it like a left-handed person and just complained the whole way, or got used to it, because that's what I just did. I just got used to it. It was just like Turok controls or GoldenEye controls, whatever, I can do them.
Yeah. I think it's kind of this was also PlayStation also. It wasn't just Nintendo 64, but this was intimidating also, because you just got, a few buttons on SNES compared to this thing. Then you get this weird button on the back. Like, what the hell does that do? Like, it was like, what the hell is this?
This was scare me most, like, so you can shoot somebody. Whoa, calm down. But that's just a trigger, right?
When I first grabbed that controller and I played Mario 64, I assumed I was going to shoot fireballs with that thing till I pressed it, and then like, oh, he just ducks. Okay.
Squats, you know.
That's very disappointing. That should have been the fireball button. You're right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you think about that. He doesn't actually throw fireballs in there when that's been kind of like the staple of Mario the whole time.
Damn. Well, okay. Well, do you want to start with the oh gosh,
Countdown list?
Honorable mentions?
Yeah, do you want to start with the honorable mentions, or do you want to just go
let's do those last.
Okay. All right. Well, Ryan, since you're a guest, on the show, number 5. What's your number 5 N64 game?
Okay. Not to have another tangent or speed bump, but I'm just gonna say it's.
But the Sega Dreamcast control now.
There's so many great games. Some of these games, I think that there's going to be a lot of overlap. So I'm going to pick games that I really like, but really there's probably another game or two that would more likely be on this list. But I feel like a lot of those games have been talked to death. So I'm just going to start off with maybe a few more obscure ones. Jet Force Gemini is one that really stood out to me. And I think that was that bridging. I mean, yeah, there's some things about it that haven't aged as well, but for the time, I feel like that was that bridging gap between, your kind of Legend of Zelda kind of adventure onto what would be something kind of like Gears of War. I know there's a big gap between those two, but I feel like it's one of those games like, okay, it's a little bit more violent. It's a lot more violent.
Yeah, it's like one of the most violent games ever made.
But they're bugs and all that. Like, it still has some of that cutesy design, but it has that crazy over-the-top gore, but they're bugs, so it's T. And that makes it okay.
Well, you could shoot the teddy bear things, too.
Those two, yeah. But they're the bears. They're not real people, So that's why I made it okay for you to shoot a head off of it and collect it. You're not supposed to, but it's there if you want to, So this is the way the game treats it. The thing about that game is it's kind of like PG-13 Starship Troopers, really, when you think about it, and it was probably the first third-person shooter, and they kind of threw in some platforming and collecting elements to kind of give it more of that, I guess, kind of rare kind of feel to match what a lot of things are on 64 at the time. The only problem I have with the game is roughly when you get to the halfway point, you have to go around because you beat everybody's campaign, and then you have to go replay certain levels to go get parts to the spaceship to go catch up to the main boss for the final time. And that right there was really, and it was not very intuitive. You have to replay a level with one character, get to a point where you can't go any further, then switch characters, replay that whole level all over again, get to that point where that character left off on. And so that was the only reason why it's probably not higher on the list. But I remember just first off, being a little intimidated by the game and kind of looking around like, is it okay? Am I allowed to play this kind of game? Because I'm not going to lie, my parents did not want me playing M-rated games. Well, it's T, so, they're not looking. Fuck it. And they had the whole thing in that game where, what was the big part to me? There's there's a thing I was going to mention that stood out to me about the game, but I just totally drew a blank. There's one time I was playing, because it was also surprising, how many options you had to go in when fighting. The best weapon was the machine gun, and just kind of spray and pray, and that would usually work. But every so often, an ant would pull out a grenade, and I remember this one time, there's a bunch of ants and bugs running around everywhere. I'm just machine gunning everything. Machine gun just ran out. I had to switch to the pistol. I saw this ant above throw this grenade, and I shot the grenade right as it was about to kind of land a little over everyone else, and it just exploded and just it slowed down the frame rate so much, but so many heads, fake green blood just went everywhere. I turn around, there's another ant with another grenade, and while it's still in its hand, I shot it, same thing, and I remember I just lucked out, really. I remember just being yelling, "I'm a god of death!" And my dad's like, "Shut the fuck up!" in the other room.
Pounded on the door.
So good. Why are we getting that fucking thing?
No, Jet Force Gemini is one of those really magical games, and it is that kind of. I'll say this: if you ever have the hankering to play it again, too, the Xbox version on Xbox One / I guess you can play it on Series X as well too nowadays, but it comes on the Rare Replay collection. Does a really good job of just like making that game look crystal clear. Even if you want to kind of adjust the controls a little bit more modern, it's there. It's pretty darn cool. But Jet Force Gemini is so much fun. The gore in it was always mind-blowing. Whenever I go back and play it, though, that game is so violent, though. It's almost like more violent than just about anything else you'll play. I mean, it's got the cutesy graphics, and since they're ants, they're not real people, I guess, by that, definition. And so, by that British definition, because it's rare. But the one thing I always wish that game did have, though, and I know that, it's just because of the time and, just the games couldn't handle it, but that game would have made for an amazing split screen kind of co-op game, though. That would have been such a great game for that.
That would have been pretty cool. Yeah, but a lot of it was like single campaign for a while because you had to beat it with this character, then that character. But there's ways to probably could figure that out. Actually, I think there was a quasi co-op because later you got that little robot buddy that would kind of follow you around. Mm-hmm. And if you had like a vent you had to go through, you control that thing to fly around and all that. I want to say you could do kind of like the Tails thing, I guess the shooter equivalent to a Tails thing, where you just kind of get to shoot at other people, but you don't get to fly around and do it or nothing like that.
Maybe there was that. I know it also had.
I think there was something like that.
It also had 4-player multiplayer in it, but that game I felt like you could have scrapped the multiplayer and had just a straight up co-op instead.
I haven't played that game since probably 2000, 2001. I mean, it's been a long ass time. It's probably a little later than that. Probably when I was switching to PS2. I haven't played it since. Mm-hmm. I was switching consoles. Man, yeah, I definitely don't remember it like y'all do, but I do remember it being an awesome game. I guess maybe because I don't remember it being as violent as that, but looking back, I guess it was really kind of, especially for 64.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was more violent than Doom 64. You know what I mean? More violent than Turok.
Gosh. Maybe Goldeneye. Goldeneye was pretty violent. You really want to think about it, too. So, all right. Well, Spencer, what's number 5 for you?
Well, Wes, I was going to have you go with number 5 first, so then I could make I still haven't made my decision on what my number 5 is.
I'll go.
I was just going to say, I'll see what Wes and Ryan do first, and that will let me know what I choose.
Well, I'll tell you what. Mine is the first game I ever played on 64. I got a 64 on Christmas. I had never played it until I got it. Mm-hmm. I had seen it be played. I think my cousin Luke had it, and I'd watched him play it a little bit, but I had yet to have played it. And I opened everything up, and then there was a couple games, and one of them was Top Gear Rally.
Ooh.
Yes.
I never actually played that one.
Oh my God. It's probably not the best racing game on 64, but it might be my favorite. I played hours and hours and hours of it. It only had I think maybe 6 tracks, but the weather would change. Like you could do jungle, snow, or desert, whatever. And it was crazy, but the things I liked about it, one, the racing was really good. So, like I mentioned before, Nintendo 64, the racing completely changed. Mm-hmm. That joystick and the 3D environment and everything, it was just a whole different feel. It actually was really, really fun to actually play a racing game for the first time. And the car would kind of you'd have your little nuances like a car would have, not compared to playing dirt today, but, still pretty damn good. And I played the shit out of that game. And another thing, not only were you able to upgrade as you went along, they were fake cars. They were similar to cars at the time, but they weren't real ones. But you could customize the cars and paint them, and write immature things on them, which was probably my favorite thing to do. The poop car or whatever, whatever it was.
Someone drew a dick on it.
Yeah, there was dicks. Of course, I remember making a WCW car and things like that. Anything where you could customize stuff, that was my jam. Where you can create your own thing and then race it. I love that too, but man, that game was so fun, and it had shortcuts everywhere.
Yep, those are always a big thing in that series.
Yeah. I loved the shit out of that game. Still have my
You got the cart there?
the original one. This is the very first game I got on 64, and if you see it, it's worn out. You can't see like the sticker's like completely done.
Well, that's the thing too, is because those are all those games. Like Midway just had a copious amount of great racing and arcade games, and a lot of them got kind of ported from the arcade straight to like the 64 and so on, and it carried like a lot of those there. Very cool stuff always.
Oh yeah, there was a sequel to it. I think it was called Overdrive or something.
Yeah, because
like
that was the one I played a lot of that because I knew a friend and he had Top Gear Overdrive because that's the one that had the Viper on the cover with like the teeth. I mean, that's like one of the most like 90s looking cover.
Oh my God.
The Dodge Viper, plus it's got teeth, so it's like, oh, you know where you are. You see that one.
Super 90s. Remember there was a Viper TV show, just to branch off for like a split second? Mm-hmm. Does anybody remember that?
Viper TV show.
There was a show about the Dodge Viper car, and it was like an action show.
I remember a sci-fi NASCAR show.
Oh, I do remember
secret agents in like an F-Zero style NASCAR thing, and it was actually labeled NASCAR. And then I remember a really bad one called Vampires, and they were robot cars that were also vampires.
I kind of like that. It's so stupid. I like it. Oh man, I don't remember either of those, but I just remember the Viper show just clicked in my brain for some reason, and now I have to look back at that.
I also got the Mustang.
Oh my God! Now I gotta find it because it was just so bad. It was kind of like a Thunder in Paradise kind of thing. It was on that level. But anyway, yeah, number 5 for me, Top Gear Rally. Definitely recommend you playing it if you want to do some cool flips. Jungle level, you take the shortcut, you whip around, and as soon as you get back on the main course, there's like this little ledge on the end. As soon as you get back on the road, if you hit your back tire on that, you'll do some dramatic flips. It was probably one of my favorite things to do. And then restart the race because I wanted to win also, but I also wanted to wreck and flip and do stuff like that because it was awesome.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, that's always half the fun. Okay, well, if that's what you guys going for number 5, I guess I made my mind up. I'll keep it in that racer kind of category. I'm going to go with Star Wars Episode 1, The Pod Racer.
Oh, that one's good.
Because that's one of those games that, like, that game, when it came out, it was like mind-blowing awesome. Like, because here's the thing. It's like you had race car games like Cruis'n World and Top Gear Rally and all kinds of stuff like that. But then it's like all of a sudden you get this pod racer game, and it's based off, off the movie, and it's like probably like one of the best scenes in Episode 1 anyways. And then it's like you're racing at like not only just, normal like 100, 200 miles per hour. Now you're going at like 600, 700, 800 miles per hour, and the graphics on it look, in a sense like how in the movie does. I mean, I know it's kind of aged a little bit and so on, but then it's like looks so good. You had all kinds of races to do, tracks and so on like that. I mean, they just have the remaster come out. You can get on Switch or PS4 or Xbox or whatever you want, and that thing's amazing. Plus, having it on Switch is just so cool because before, like the 64 version's great too, but like the Dreamcast one kind of cleared it up just a little bit. That was always the N64 thing, is that there's always that little bit of fog sometimes to kind of make it. But that Pod Racer game is such a good racing game. Like, I think that's one of the ones that holds up almost more than almost anything else out there, because that's one of those ones that you can sit down and like just continuously play it. Not just play it for fun for like just 10 minutes. Be like, okay, cool, I got that. I remember how that game kind of went. Like, that's one of those ones that like you could sit down and seriously play it from beginning to end, and it's just tons of fun the whole way.
I remember. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I bought it for Switch as soon as it came out, and it's, oh God, the nostalgia for that one.
You just got
It's a new lap record.
It's very quotable too, and then you go. You buy it, you break it, you buy it.
It's also like funny because, well, when you heal, because you have to like repair your car or your pods when they get damaged enough. But the thing is, the button that like makes it do that, if you push it twice, which you just try to click it to fix and repair the pod. That's also for your characters to like yell out, and the Anakin is the only one speaking English, so everyone else is like. So it's just I'm just imagining like, okay, so you're an alien and you're mad, like, Okay, like how many different voice actors they hire to play like these 18 different aliens, and then like, oh yeah, Jake Lloyd.
It's one of those ones.
Probes for all of them. Just all the action.
It's one of those ones. If that wasn't Star Wars and it was anything else, that's the one where the parents be like, "Dude, what the fuck is he playing?" At least the Star Wars themes kind of play in there, so it's like, "Oh, okay, he's into Star Wars. Okay, not playing something retarded, I guess."
One of my go-tos was Gascano, and I remember at one point we had the N64 in the living room, and Gascano, I was like, and like, so like, like all that. And my dad was just like, "What the fuck is that?" With a beer in his hand. Like, oh, it's fucking Star. All right.
Oh Lord.
The cow and chicken thing was fucking weird.
Just hear the garage door open and close real quick.
Another beer.
Man, all the episode 1 stuff was really, really fun. And that game was so fun. Like, you couldn't have done that. There was nothing that you could do with that with the new movies. But the prequels, I have tons of issues with them, but man, they brought out some fun stuff. I think all the stuff surrounding the prequels were more fun than them itself, and that game might be the best thing attached to episode 1, including the movie.
Well, I mean, it's between that and Jedi Power Battles, I would say, as far as like those games kind of go. For like the episode 1 games, like those 2 games right there are like the 2 real solid ones. I mean, I'm gonna use the Force Gemini complaint because I remember as a kid I always kind of wished that Star Wars: The Pod Racer had the co-op on it too. Like it has 2-player versus, but I'm like, man, that game once again, like I guess maybe in the 90s that's what I was looking for. I was really looking for split screen co-op games, and it's just like that was such a rare thing to find. Is that split screen games were just not there as much. I mean, there might be versus, but like split screen co-op, and I always thought that pod race would be sweet to have with.
Dang, that would have been fun. Too bad they didn't bring something like that out on the new ones, but still.
Yeah, I know. I always feel like sometimes when they put those new ones together, it's like, I know it's like they just want to get like a couple guys in a room and just like, up, the resolution, the frame rate and all that kind of stuff and call it good. But it would be kind of nice to be like, hey, add a couple little bit more bells and whistles modes in there. Why not? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody ever play, not to get us too off track, but it didn't come out to 64 GameCube. It came out to PS2.
The second one?
Podraker Sequel. Yeah, anybody play that one?
I did. I have it. I have it on PS4 actually, because I didn't play it till much later. But you can get it on PS4, and it's weird because it's actually pretty similar. I mean, it's like the same kind of build as the game and so on like that. There's just like there's just something that's a little bit off from it. But I'm not saying that it's not a good game. It's still pretty darn fun and still kind of gives you more pod race levels and so on. If I remember correctly, it's almost, this sounds so weird, they changed the way that the boost works in it, and that kind of threw me off just a little bit. But the rest of the game's actually totally fine, but I don't know, like the idea that the boost wasn't that same way that you hold the joystick forward, let the engine build up, double tap A, have it take off, and make sure you release A before your engine explodes. It was almost like, it had more like almost like an F-Zero style. I'm thinking, I could be wrong here, but like where like you built up boost and then you could use like, you have 3 of them and that's it. Or something like that. And I remember that was the only thing I didn't like, because I love that boost style that they have in the Pod Racer original. Like, that's such a cool way that, like, hey, you got this boost, you got to kind of build up speed first, but you can't, like, go too hardcore on it or else you'll explode and then you're screwed.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like, the response to that sounds kind of like, not to get us on another tangent, but like, Jet Grind Radio, like the first one, I love the first one, and the second one, Jet Set Radio Future came out, and you play it, and it's like, it's not that it's a bad game or even a worse game. No. There's just something about it that just doesn't click like the first one did, you know?
Yeah, that's a perfect example, because that game felt the same way too. I played the living daylights out of Jet Grind Radio, and then the second one came out, and I started up, and then I started playing that other game that came with it, because it was like a Sega dual pack on the Xbox, and I was just like, I started playing that car game for some reason. I'm like, you got Jet Grind Radio 2 sitting right here, and you're going after the other one. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. I think it was Sega Rally or something like that, but it's just like, I don't know, it just didn't capture me. But that's how I felt about the Pod Racer. Like I played it for like a good couple of hours or something like that, and it was still fun, but it was just slightly off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never played this sequel. I never played it.
Yeah, nobody did. I didn't know anybody had it. That was like one of those ones. Like, I think because they started doing that thing where they started splitting up the Star Wars games and so on, and realistically, they probably should have stuck more with Nintendo. I know I say that of so many things, but I really felt Nintendo and Star Wars seemed to kind of go a little bit more hand in hand than PlayStation. PlayStation always felt like a weird place for Star Wars. It just felt like it's not really the right place. And even Xbox kind of was always kind of an odd one, too. But I'll say I feel like if Star Wars fits more in Xbox than it does PlayStation.
Yeah. I agree, especially in that point in time. All right, so
we made it one tier.
We made it one tier. Yeah, we might just, you know what? Forget the first two. We're just gonna do three. No. Well, so number 4, Ryan. What is your number 4 game?
Bomberman 64.
Oh man,
such a good game.
And the thing with Bomberman 64 was I knew of Bomberman, but I didn't really play any Bomberman. Not that I disliked it, just never got around to playing it. Then I went to go to my friend's house and playing this one. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And what I didn't know was, as far as my knowledge is, I didn't realize Bomberman was more of an arena-style game, where it's just like, here's kind of a puzzle, you figure out how the bombs explode and how to work around and kind of like what blocks can destroy and how can you corner someone and blow them up. I didn't realize that's what Bomberman usually was, because then I got like the Bomberman game with the Indiana Jones motif for the Game Boy. I'm like, oh, it's not the same thing, but it's fun, whatever. And I got another one. I'm like, it's more of this shit, you know. I thought Bomberman in general was like Bomberman 64. We have to explore a level, but you still have to avoid your own bombs. And there's something about that game that just really stood out to me. I remember being as a kid, first comic I made was a Bomberman 64 comic. Like, I'm going to make a series. I got as far as issue 4. But it was one of those things where something about that game just really stood out to me. And I'm surprised. Now I feel like it's looked back with reverence, but kind of more in a culty kind of way, not like in a real big way. Like, those characters look like they were made to be made into action figures or little like Japanese collectibles. Maybe they were in Japan, but not here. Because even the villains in that game all looked super cool, you know? And I remember at some point, there's the one villain, he's one of the first guys you fight, and he has like this weird dash/slash thing. And then he's the one that later kind of comes in and helps you out. And the guy's been helping you out the whole time, who has this whole like white and gold eagle, like kind of like a white Power Ranger thing going on, is actually the main villain. I remember that was being a big twist. Like, you think you beat the game, then you go and get all the other stuff. And then from there, I don't remember all the details. Then like the eagle guy comes in, I think his name was Cyrus, something like that, kills the main bad guy like he's nothing. Oh shit, this is the main villain. Oh my God.
We had that twist and everything there too. Because I remember playing that one. I didn't own that one, but I played that one a bit back in the day. I had Bomberman World for PlayStation. That was kind of like my big introductory to Bomberman. And then I kind of spread out from there. But Bomberman 64 was always super fun. It played really fluidly. The levels were really cool design. Just, I don't know, something also about just chucking bombs at stuff. Like, I don't know, that's one of those things that never really gets old. There's just like that great feeling of just like throwing a bomb or setting a bomb there and waiting for something to run into it, you know? And getting that joyous, like, yeah, fucking just gonna set that bomb up.
Punk ass bitch.
They had a second Bomberman, which like 64 style, which I didn't play, but I wanted to. I just never got around to it. And then there's Bomberman Hero, which was trying to do the more platformer thing, but was still like you can get hurt by your own explosions. So kind of Bomberman rules, and you can jump and all that kind of stuff. I remember that one being fun, but it wasn't the same thing as Bomberman 64. That top down, kind of like. They're almost trying to, like, looking at it now, I didn't really put together to this moment. They're almost trying to make an old-fashioned 2D style Zelda game, only level-based and with Bomberman rules, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, seeing as Bomberman is usually an arena-based game.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like a lot of the Super Nintendo ones, I remember the one I liked a lot, too, was, like, 4 and 5 from Japan, because... Once again, this comes back to, like, this would be, like, my issue, I guess, the thing, but they had co-op in that one. I thought that was, like, one of the coolest things. Like, oh, we can play Bomberman together? This is amazing. You could ride animals and all kinds of stuff. They had all the bells and whistles there.
Oh, yeah, there's that one. I forgot about that one.
But, I've always really enjoyed the Bomberman games. Like, they always have a great time. Not only Bomberman 64 being a great, just kind of, like, platform adventure one and so on like that, but also... you kind of just having the multiplayer aspect of them was always really fun. I bought a multi-tap for my PlayStation just for Bomberman. Like that was gonna be like a big birthday like thing. It's you're gonna play some WWF and you're gonna play some Bomberman.
Damn. I barely played that one. I'll be honest. I played that one just a little bit. I remember my brother really liking that game, though. Playing Bomberman a lot. That was his big thing on 64 because he didn't really get into games until PlayStation 2. He's a little bit younger than me. I think he played like Pokemon Snap on 64. That was like that was the only thing I remember him playing in the wrestling games. But damn, he played the shit out of Bomberman, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got Bomberman 64 and Jet Force Gemini for you. I am going. Damn, I'm struggling. I don't want to do 2 racing games in a row, so I'm gonna push mine back a little bit. This one I could talk about. This is the game I probably played the most on N64. Hours and hours and hours and hours of it. I can't put it at number 1 because just in terms of it's the same thing over and over technically, but WCW NWO Revenge. I played the ever-loving daylights out of that damn game. Oh my god, it was that was definitely the most anticipated game for me. I remember seeing commercials for it on Nitro probably, and the second I was my first job technically was handing out these leaflets for this restaurant that in my little town of Troutman. It was just this little tiny restaurant, and I saved the money and I bought that. It's the first thing I ever bought with my own money that I earned. I bought that game and I played the piss out of it. It was like nonstop, and then eventually, you could also customizable, so you could change things up, change the wrestlers' names, change their uniforms, everything, or costumes, I should say. And then after beating the game and playing it a few times, I would just start creating my own league.
Yeah.
And, renaming all the wrestlers, like their own personas and everything. There's just the freedom to do the kind of stuff you have with it. The NES and SNES wrestling games are fun, but this was just a whole nother level. And I don't even know if it's the best one on 64. I mean, WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy were pretty damn good too, but this one, special place in my heart for sure.
Well, that one's definitely the one that game was the first one that kind of led me into just all the wrestling games in general, and I played a lot of that one. I mean, definitely No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000 as far as the 64 goes. Those were the ones that I played the living daylights out of more than anything else, along with SmackDown and SmackDown 2 on PlayStation. But the WCW ones, because that's always kind of the sad thing, is because they had that engine, and then WWF bought it from them, and then used it to make 2 glorious WWF games, and then like the sad thing is that those WCW games turn into like Backstage Assault at some point, and then you get that kind of fiasco. But boy, I think also too, because that's one of these many things that the 64 did that like just blew your mind. Just you went from like almost like a 2D world to this 3D one. But I just remember playing WCW like right at the beginning and just having like, dude, you got these 3D battles going on. We could walk anywhere around the ring. It's not just the 2D one like Raw was, or the ones on Super Nintendo and whatnot, Royal Rumble, the arcade game and so on. But like, you have this full thing and pick up, any kind of weapons you want, smash people through objects and so on, the customization, create your own character, like just that in itself became its own kind of world of like how many different things you could do. I love that one so much.
Well, also too, it was right at the end, it came out as, you were getting red and black NWO. So WCW was kind of like on their tilt downward, but it was still popular. It was still really, really good, but it was kind of like the last hurrah really for WCW, because you still had some really good wrestlers on there, and it was still kind of peak WCW, but that's by the time that game actually come out, I think the whole Mankind Championship finger poke of doom thing had already happened that particular night. So I think it was WCW was on the back end of its run, I guess you could say.
Well, you could almost say that game kind of solidifies the like the golden age of WCW, because right then Attitude Era kind of steps up for WWF, and then that's kind of that's it for WCW games.
Yeah, pretty much. That was there was a sequel to WCW Nwo Revenge.
Oh, there's
for
a
N64.
well, because there's what is there 3 of them? No, there's like 3 on PlayStation made by that company, and then I think there's 2 on N64 before they go to the WWF ones.
Well, I don't know if it was ever released or what the deal with it was, but I'll have to look into it. But there was a third one called Feel the Bang.
Oh yeah. That one never was released.
Was it released? Yeah, I just happened to have seen that at some point in time, and I was like, I never played that. What is this all about?
If you go to like those, there's like
ahead.
in those N64 kind of like mod communities, there's like a big section of like where people take No Mercy, and then they made that one using a No Mercy mod. They like created what that game would have been and everything like that. And then they kind of created, because there's supposed to be also, after No Mercy, there was actually going to be another WWF game from that same company in that same style, like 2001 and 64, and then they never technically made that because they switched to, the SmackDown company, THQ. And then from that point on, they stayed with them for, like 10 plus more years.
Those games were fun, all of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously WrestleMania 2000 added all kinds of stuff in there, but I don't want to get to it because it might end up on a list. I don't know, but we'll talk about that later if we can. But all right, so it's your turn. What's
is it me? Are we on number 4?
Yeah.
If we're going to number 4, I'm going to go with this was a big game to me growing up, and this was Mission Impossible on N64.
Oh yeah, their answer to Goldeneye, basically. I mean, we played way different, but that was kind of like, well, Goldeneye's popular, so they brought out Mission Impossible.
Yeah, because that's sort of what it was. Now, granted, this game was like in the works for like a while, but it was kind of that same thing too. Because like I feel like you couldn't really do this nowadays, where like the movie comes out and then like a handful of years later the game comes out. Could you imagine that now? Like one of those ones where it's just like, okay, here's the movie, and then oh yeah, by the way, like 3 years later the Goldeneye game's going to come out, and then oddly enough it becomes like one of the biggest things there. But that's just due to the fact that being a big game. But it's almost the same thing that like Mission Impossible's like, screw it, we can do it too. Like it just would feel so strange to come out like that late to it. But what I like about the Mission Impossible though is I felt like, because Goldeneye it's an amazing game for what it is and so on. But I felt like, in a sense at the end of the day it's a straight up first person shooter and so on. And I feel like when it comes down to like Spy, whether it be 007 or Mission Impossible and whatnot, there's a lot more kind of like other elements in there. And I felt that Mission Impossible is what really gave you the feel of that. Especially like there's like the third level in there where you got to kind of sneak in, just like in the kind of like the movie and stuff, where you're in like the fancy, pretty much the place where like once Tom Cruise kind of realizes that everybody's going to turn on, or not doesn't turn on him, but everything goes like haywire him to shit. But like the idea of like, I never played a game before that like, oh, I have to sneak around and I have to lead this lady into the bathroom, take her out, change faces and so on, interrogate and whatnot. There's just all these little elements, plant the little bombs and like the vent shafts and so on, things that like, nowadays, there's like so many games would have had it, and this still would, I guess it would have been the same year as Metal Gear Solid, but like I played this one much before I played Metal Gear Solid. So you just saw these kind of cool elements in here, and the sneaking around, and it had like the extended cut version of the movie, so it had all these other levels, and there was action scenes, there was scenes of sneaking, there was scenes of like investigating, then you got of course like the laser scene where you're going down through there and whatnot. So I felt like it had this variety. It wasn't just a straight up shooter, you had all this other stuff kind of going on in the game.
I remember, for whatever reason, I know it's probably different, but I remember it being kind of like Siphon Filter. Yeah. I don't know what came out first, but I remember getting that kind of vibe from it. And I never got that far in the game, but I remember that kind of sticking out and being like, oh, wait, this is way more intricate than just jumping on the Goomba or kind of hiding around the corner. All the planning went ahead of time. I never got that far in the game, but I could see how that game actually made a big impact at the time. Yeah,
because that's the thing. Is like, Siphon Filter, I think the first one would have been 97. But even that game is still more of like a straight up shooter. I mean, there's other stuff in it too, but like you mostly are going around shooting stuff. Where I felt like this one added just kind of like a little bit more depth to like the spy genre and so on. And I don't know, that was just one of those games that just really stood out. I thought that was really cool. Just had these just different elements in it that I've never seen in a game before. And yeah, it's just kind of like almost like the narrative type stuff. And then also there's the PlayStation version too that kind of adds a little bit more to it. It has like full motion video cutscenes, and I think it's got some voice acting and so on. Because that's the one I technically own, because I owned a PlayStation. I could play a 64 game at someone's house at that time, but I was like, well, I guess I'll have to settle for the PlayStation version then.
I never played it. I guess I was a snob about it.
You should. It still holds up. I mean, that might just come from someone who played it back in the day, but like, I played it not too long ago, and I was like, oh, Mission Impossible's still just as fun as ever. You know, I mean, you gotta have a little bit of patience for it. It's definitely a little bit old in that way. That's like, hey, Ethan, you screwed up. Restart the mission.
I know it's a different game, but I remember something about spy games at the time, especially even like Goldeneye. You could fuck up a mission. Like, well, you're already this far. Keep on going. Now you fucked up, so you got to restart it again. You know, you could like if you don't like, because it wouldn't just be like, oh, you fucked up, restart now. It was just like, you fucked up, keep on going, then restart over.
Yeah, well, that's how Goldeneye started. Was like, well, you can finish the mission. I mean, you're gonna have to replay it anyways, but we're not your parents. You can do whatever you want. Mission Impossible, I wanted to say, did have it where it was just like, nope, you screwed up, restart. Because like I will say, it does have some of those. It does have some of those little issues in it. Like I'm not gonna say, but at the time you kind of bypass that stuff because it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so new and fresh and different. And I've always just kind of liked the third person a little bit more than the first person. Anyways, it made me feel like I was kind of more in like the movie character and everything like that. So yeah, I really like that Mission Impossible game. That game was huge for me.
I think Angry Video Game Nerd has a really good video about that one. I remember seeing in the past. I don't remember anything specific about it, but I know he has a video about that one in particular. So maybe check that out too. But damn. Okay, well, so we've got 2 down.
I don't.
Are y'all doing okay?
I'm doing good. I just want to say I'm sorry for being in and out. My dog here is acting up kind of right now. I don't know why she's acting so weird. But yeah, sorry I was in and out. But I was like, you know what? They're talking about wrestling. I never played a wrestling game. I don't know shit about wrestling. All I know from wrestling is whatever Spencer tells us on Old Man Orange. So I'm just like, okay, well, I got nothing to add. Now's the time to grab the dog.
Yeah, I was going to say, like Ryan stepped out the perfect moment. It's like, it's not like we were talking about some, like a game you really want to be talking about.
Well, I keep stopping and looking at my phone too because there's lightning and stuff outside, so I'm trying to see if that's going to be an issue. So I'm hoping it's not. But yeah, I think I'm past the big part of the storm. Kind of bummed though because I like to go outside when it's like that and sit on the porch. But all right, so yeah, number 3. Number 3 for Ryan.
My number 3 is Star Wars Rogue Squadron.
I'm glad you picked it.
Yep.
Because you had like other Star Wars games at the time, but they were usually like, even like I love Shadows of the Empire. The thing about Shadows of the Empire is there's so many different play styles, and you're just playing as Dash Rendar most of the time. Even though they had like you're playing as Luke and Wedge Antilles throughout the game, and they even had Mark Hamill and different voice actors from the movies in there. There was something about it that just made it so much more immersive. And as much as I liked playing Star Wars games that were like, oh, this is Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back or Episode 1, whatever, I really liked playing the games that are meant to take place between these games because I felt like there's so many more places to go to or just see weird combinations. Because at the time, it was kind of like if you didn't have the movie, now there's so many Star Wars things, but anytime you didn't have a movie, you had like the books or the games to kind of fill in the rest of that universe. And I remember that game being just the right amount of stuff you haven't seen in a game yet and stuff that was already in some games in classic locations from the movie. So I remember that being a big deal, and just like being a flight simulator game where you can just go around. I remember they even had like the tutorial level, like, hey kids, just figure it out. Just fly this T-16 and Tatooine and Mos Eisley, just figure it out. And if you wanted to, you could be an asshole and just go mow down like all these houses. And it wasn't enough that you could just destroy like all these houses in the middle of like Mos Eisley, but they had these little tiny bits of people that were running and they would shoot at you and you could just shoot down back at them. So that was one of those things that would be like there's like a lot of like, kind of early Grand Theft Auto. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 1 was probably already out by then, but there is like a lot of that kind of thing you could do when you weren't playing a level, and it just was. I remember just having some of the most fun with that game. That was one of those games I got and just played for hours upon hours.
Yeah, no, that was that good time period where like they really did just make sweet Star Wars that kind of added in. It's almost like bonus movies. It's like same way that Shadows of the Empire was, but that's how Rogue Squadron 1 was too. Like I really kind of tossed up which Star Wars game I was going to choose to put on there, 'cause I was like, gosh, that's the thing. Is the 64 just like, especially just like there's like that trinity of those. I mean, I know there's Battle for Naboo as well too. It kind of gets a little bit forgotten, but like
Battle for Naboo is like the episode 1 version. It's the same kind of game style and same kind of gameplay, but just episode 1. Sorry to cut you off there.
I mean, no, it's a great one too, but that one always kind of gets a little bit more forgotten. But like, still, it's like, man, like Rogue Squadron, so much fun. Just I think that's another one of those ones that like the only time I can think of that I flew, you had TIE Fighter and X-Wing on PC, and then sometimes I remember like there's like the Rebel Assault games you kind of could fly, but like that's always how so many of those ones kind of felt like you kind of could fly, or there was like the one flying level in Shadows of the Empire that I felt was kind of like the test run for Rogue Squadron and so on. But like when you finally got that's like, oh, and that's the whole game is I just gonna fly around X-Wings and Y-Wings and Z-Wings and all that kind of stuff. Or what was it, V-Wing? What was that? What was the special?
There's a V-Wing.
Yeah.
There's a V-Wing. I don't think the B-Wing was in that one. Maybe in the next one. Maybe,
I think so, but like there's quite a bit. I mean, they had the cool unlockables and so on. They had the AT-ST you could, take out. Couldn't remember, did they have the car thing at that time period, or was that like also?
They had a car. I want to say they had a TIE Fighter. I don't remember which TIE Fighter. And they had a Naboo Starfighter to unlock. And it looked all old and beat up, like it's been in storage for a long time.
Yeah, and I remember that was kind of cool because episode 1 wasn't out yet. Yeah. So that was kind of a neat one there.
What was I going to say about that? Because the thing about the other ones, like I'm not going to lie, I suck at video games, but X-Wing and TIE Fighter, I always had trouble with like flight simulators with a keyboard. I always had trouble with it. So I'm playing it around like, where's the bad guy? Where's the bad guy? You just basically look at I was for myself looking at the radar most of the time, just trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And something like Rogue Squadron was just way more focused and narrowed in on like one thing. And I think that's why that game did such a good job. But I remember speaking back on the V-Wing, there was something about that. Like everyone wanted to play as the new spaceship that wasn't in any of the movies, but you didn't get the V-Wing until like near the end of the game. And when you finally play, like, oh, the V-Wing's not that great, I might as well stick to the X-Wing or the A-Wing or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that was the other kind of cool thing, though, is like once you beat the levels, though, you could always kind of go back and generally use just about any of them in there, unless it was like a specific one for a mission, like a Y-Wing bombing raid or something like that. But yeah, that's one of those games, too, that still like really holds up well. I actually played it I had like a Star Wars marathon like a little over 6 months ago, and I went through that one again. I played it on the PC version this time because I always wanted to try that one out. But it's kind of similar, just a little bit more clear. But that game still is always fun.
It looked good. It played good. Man, Star Wars and the N64 just worked. I don't know why. It just did. It's something about that era. It just was the perfect timing for both. With my number 3. Not to kind of jump too far, but mine is actually Shadows of the Empire.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's the same. Just say real quick about that one. I won't spend too much time on it because we've kind of already hinted at it a few times, but that was actually what got me into Star Wars, like really into it. I had seen the original trilogy before then. And I think my, uncle took me to see the special editions. And I was kind of interested, and then I played Shadows of the Empire, and something about it just made everything click for me. I don't know why, but ever since then, that's when I started really getting into it. So I wasn't like most kids where they got into it really young. I
saw the flash.
Yeah, there it is.
Man, that was close. Wow. But yeah, I wasn't like most kids where I got into a really young age. I kind of got into just a little bit older. And I've always had a fond place in my heart for that game. It did not age well. You go back and look at it, it did not age as well as Episode 1 Racer or Rogue Squadron. It looks a little bit more, a little rough around the edges, but man, some of those scenes in there, like the Boba Fett fight scene in there, and there's sneaking around the Imperial bases and stuff like that, and just the characters and bringing in the old characters. You got the new character.
800 shots in order to kill a Wampa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, though, is
such a fun game.
that game, though, was also the one that, like, that one was definitely, like, pretty much like having a brand new movie. Like, especially even the way they did. They marketed that one kind of hard. They had the tie-in book. They had the tie-in. Well, I guess the book was kind of the main thing. I think the game was the tie-in to the book. But let's be honest, everybody remembers the game. The book was always kind of sort of second. And then there's the comic book and everything like that. And it really was kind of like, because I think at that time period, too, there was kind of that idea that, like, there might not be another Star Wars right yet, you know, or who knows?
Yeah.
Like, I know George has mentioned it, but what if he never makes out another one? This could be, like, our Star Wars from that point on. And just that game, too, I felt just really, like, showed off the N64. I know I keep kind of tying these into the PC, but if you have never played the PC version of that was in my Star Wars marathon recently. I tried out the Shadows of the Empire on there instead, and I didn't realize it's like there's full-on cutscenes in the PC version. Like, they're not just like like, you know, the still picture with the narrative. I mean, like, full-on, like, they did some nice 1996 like pre-rendered graphics on there, and you're like, holy crap. Like,
I'll say, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, it's like that part right there was just pure amazing. Like, blew my mind. I did not expect that when I beat a level, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I mean, if you can handle old games, that game still is really fun to play. I mean, it's one of those ones that I think if you're kind of expecting it to have kind of modern controls and so on, like it's a little bit tough to get behind. But if you're used to playing old games, like I jumped right back into it, and it felt kind of like yesterday.
Other thing about about Shadows of the Empire as a whole, it's weird. I, for the first time not so long ago, I never read the book. I listened to the audiobook, and Wes disappeared there.
He did.
Should we just jump in like nothing happened, or should I kind of be like part 2 of the?
You can do like an editing, like static thing or something like that, like the VCR gave out.
Well, I do that actually. I have like a adjust tracking thing on the. So when I edit the video, I have a Via VHS podcast adjust tracking, and then it'll come back. But I think I'm going to make this one like Titanic. It's the double tape. So then you have like switch to tape 2 now. Switch to tape 2 now.
You have like Celine Dion in the background.
Oh yeah, I might add that actually. I might just randomly insert.
Have you ever heard that Celine Dion cover by Dragon Force though? Like My Heart Will Go On, but it's Dragon Force playing it. It's amazing.
Well, now.
Like, I kid you not, like, once you're done with the episode, you gotta check out the Celine Dion, Dragon Force, My Heart Will Go On thing.
Remind me at midnight to listen to Dragon Force Celine Dion.
My Heart Will Go On.
Cool.
That just sounds, I know the context, but just like, wait, Celine Dion is a song called Dragon Force?
Now, that would be pretty amazing if you're like,
yeah, it's one of her French albums.
Yeah.
Dragon Force, Love. You know how she says Love? Love. Damn French Canadians. So welcome back to Via VHS again. I had to change clothes. That's really all this is about. Actually, no, the power went out. And because of that, there was no Wi-Fi, and because of that, it sent me back into the Stone Ages, and I couldn't talk across the continent to the pals, Spencer and Ryan. So this is actually the next night. We're time traveling here. So it's kind of awesome. I'm excited.
We had sort of a logical, like, stopping point. It all kind of, I guess you would say, worked out. You know what I mean?
I guess, yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see how it matches in, but...
Yeah, some other technical issues, but so bear with us. But I think where we left off is I had just discussed Shadows of the Empire. And we were moving on to my part 3. So I guess it's your number 3, right, Spencer?
Yeah, I guess that would be it, because I think you guys said all your 3s and I go last. So my number 3, I'm coming in hard and fast with Body Harvest for N64. Did you guys ever play this one?
What was it?
Body Harvest.
I just heard coming in hard and fast body, and I got really scared.
Scared / excited.
Yeah, both.
Okay, so you see, Body Harvest is one of those ones that this was... a game that, like, especially for the time period when this came out, this thing was like so ahead of, like, you know, the curve. And plus, it was supposed to actually be a launch release, but Nintendo got a little bit scared of, like, the, you know, title and violence and all that kind of stuff, that it kind of got pushed back a little bit, and then even Midway had to come in and take over it. But what it's about is about that, like, these creatures, you know, come every, like, handful of, I don't know, centuries or whatnot, and they come to harvest humans and so on. So you got to go back in time to these certain periods. And I think every single period's like 20 years or 25-year gap, you know, and stop these aliens from harvesting people and so on. And the interesting thing about it is this was like one of those kind of games that, like, it just sort of dropped you off, and it was like, in a sense, like an early days open world. It's like, okay, go figure it out. You know, you got to go solve these mysteries. You got to go talk to people. You know, you could jump into any vehicle. That was also the big deal, too, is like one of those ones, like, this is like proto Grand Theft Auto. In fact, a lot of these guys that actually worked on this went on to go and make Grand Theft Auto 3 and so on. But you could just jump into vehicles. There was motorcycles, planes, tanks, fire trucks, all kinds of stuff there. You get all kinds of different weapons and go battle these bugs, and you had to make sure that the people didn't get killed or harvested. And if too many of them did, bigger and badder aliens would come until they started to wipe out the whole planet. You know, and it was kind of neat because it had period piece type stuff. So I think, like, one part was like sort of like World War I or post World War I. Another part was like kind of like WW2. Then like kind of Cold War Siberia. There was like a section in the 90s, and then there was a future segment too. And all these parts of just kind of solving mysteries and battling aliens and being able to kind of run around freely, which was that was also what just made this thing so cool. It's just like, you know, back then, like, games, you know, you generally had like, hey, you're going from left to right, you know, or you're solving kind of things, and generally, even if it's 3D, you know, it's still, even if it's like Tomb Raider or something, you're generally solving a puzzle in kind of an orderly fashion. The fact that you're just dropped off here and say, hey, go figure this out, you know, and so on, you'll piece it together as it goes along.
That right there, you said, I never played this one either. You said that it was originally going to be a launch release, but it got pushed back. Was there technical difficulties, or was just Nintendo like, let's hold off with that name? Well,
hey, I think that's the thing. Like, we don't want it to go like Mario 64, Pilot Wings, Body Harvest. They're like, let a Mortal Kombat or a Turok come out first, and then ease your way into that, because that is kind of a brutal title when you really do think about it. Like, because it's like, that's like one of those ones like, hey mom, you know what game I want? What do you want, Billy? I want Body Harvest.
There's like, from your description, there's like 5 other titles that come to mind before Body Harvest after hearing that description.
Yeah.
So, but it's like kind of like Blast Corps. Remember when you tell someone like, "Oh, I want Blast Corps," they thought it was like a game where you're blasting corpses, not like Corpse the company.
Or then there's Corpse Killer.
Yeah.
It's okay, Mom. They're already dead.
I just like how your default child character is Billy.
It always is Billy.
Billy or Timmy. Sometimes Jimmy.
Yeah, sometimes Jimmy. They always kind of end in an
always
E.
A Y.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just hit me for some reason. I don't know why. Body Harvest.
But yeah, Body Harvest was a real cool. It's almost like, it's in like that kind of like, it's almost like Force Gemini, but kind of like with more like an adult kind of tone and everything to it. Because they also, once again, at that time period, you just didn't have those kind of games that were kind of taking sort of like a serious old timey sci-fi. It's almost like the people that this game was sort of made for was almost people definitely older than even our generation. Like, that's how it sort of fit in. It reminded me of like someone who would have been like, you know, really like 50s and 60s kind of sci-fi era type stuff.
That's interesting.
I was going to go like metal
like
or something for a minute.
No. I mean, I guess you could say it has some of that stuff in there, but no, it feels more like old school, serious kind of sci-fi. Like, you know, it's a video game. I guess you could say it almost would feel like it had a big budget, you know?
Gotcha. I looked it up. I recognized the box art and the cartridge, but I didn't know much about it, so now I'm disappointed.
That's almost one of the games that when people ask, like, hey, I just got an N64, what's a game you recommend? I always go, this is my go-to game for it, because I feel like not everybody played this one, so it's definitely a unique one, but I also think it's a game that's not really like a whole lot of other stuff out there. I mean, even just small things. Just like one of the cool weapons you get this shield you get at some point that literally reflects the sun, so you can like burn the insect kind of aliens that come on down.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
Metal. Yeah. I'm into that.
I wish I checked this game out. I remember seeing like Wes said. I remember seeing like, because I looked it up after you said the name. I remember seeing that box in Blockbuster video, but I never played it. I was just one of those. I don't know. It's hard to kind of go off of what it is, just the box. I want to say just like the title with a planet or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like a kind of like an insect-looking thing climbing over the planet and whatnot. No, it's one of those games that's definitely probably like more complex. I mean, you could kind of sum it up, I guess, simply, but it is definitely like one of those complex games where there's a lot more going on in there than just running around shooting aliens.
This sounds like also something around the time, like if you told your parent, like, I want Body Harvest, first thing that comes to mind is like Jeffrey Dahmer the game. So they're like that, which very well in a parent's mind was something that was out there in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because this game's only like teen rated too. It's like one of those ones that like it's like almost like a borderline mature rated game, but just gets away enough. Probably because once again, it's just like Force Gemini. Well, you're not real people, but in this one though, I mean, you literally could, if you want to, go around and actually shoot the civilians walking around. Like it gave you that option,
Nice.
I mean, the downfall is the more that you kill of them, that would lead closer to like the harvest station coming. So like it's just more would screw you over in the long run, but. It's almost kind of almost even like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, how like you got to make sure these people are protected or else that's it.
Never played that one either.
Oh, you know what? Zombies Ate My Neighbors is coming out in a 2-pack this June. You can get it on Switch.
I'll finally play that.
Because that's one of my. I mean, I know we're on N64, but if I was going to say like top 5 games, or at least give or take maybe top 10 games of all time, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is there. I mean, I sort of prefer the Genesis one. That might just be my own personal nostalgia, but because I don't think the Genesis version is going to be on this pack, but the Super Nintendo one's still really cool. But yeah, Body Harvest, that's my number 3. It's a game that I think that if you've never played that on N64, it's worth even just like turning it on, even if you're only going to play it for like a half an hour to an hour, just to sort of see what it's all about. Because it is, even this day and age, I don't feel like there's anything that's kind of out there that's kind of like it. This would be a really cool game that kind of needs like almost like a remake. I would say a sequel. I always like sequels more than remakes, but like I would take a remake of this one. This one feels like definitely designed for that. I don't know who owns this at the moment, but it could come back in a big bad way, like and look really nice, like on a PS5 or Xbox Series X.
The premise sounds awesome, and today you could do even more with it because you have the capability to go more places and more different eras. That sounds really dope. I like that.
Yeah, but I guess that leads us in. If that's my number 3, I guess now we're at 2 now.
Yeah, so you're number 2, Ryan. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Star Fox 64. Yeah, Tipsy likes it too. I know.
Tipsy's like, let me tell you what my number 2 is. Shut the fuck up, Tipsy.
Yeah. Star Fox 64 is my number 2, and I actually I didn't play. I didn't have a Super Nintendo for very long, at least, so I never had a chance to play the original Star Fox. So it's one of those things like, okay, yeah, I'll get to it eventually, whatever. Then going to a friend's house, and actually one of the things that amped me up for it, like many people our generation, was the Star Fox Blockbuster or Nintendo Power video. Yeah. And then seeing that and think like, wow, you can go to a parachute to work at Nintendo, and like, so that whole thing.
This VHS, Wes, if you've never seen the Star Fox VHS, I have the actual copy of it at my house, and me and Ryan on Old Man Orange episode probably 190 something. I almost want to say, I don't know why I can remember the actual number, but like the first time we talked about the Super Mario Brothers movie, we've watched this. I don't know why we watched this VHS beforehand, but for some reason I guess because it was just sitting there like, screw it, it's only 10 minutes long, we'll watch that one, then we'll go into the movie and do our Mario commentary. But like that movie to me is like so classic, that Star Fox one. Like they do like, it's like almost like a Saturday Night Live skit like at Nintendo, and Sega and Sony bust in to try to figure out like what's going on with this new Star Fox and the Rumble Pack and everything like that, and they take Mario hostage.
Mario stuffed animal.
Yeah, Mario stuffed animal, but it's Mario. It's just Mario on a low budget. And that they torture him and everything like that, trying to figure it out. And the classic line from it is like when they start to ask me like, is Star Fox 64 on Sega Saturn? Nope, only on Nintendo 64. What about Sony PlayStation? Nope, only on Nintendo 64. What about PC? How would you shut the fuck up? Only on Nintendo 64.
I think I've seen bits and pieces of this actually.
It's really amazing. It's probably one of those ones you probably could find them on YouTube if I had to guess.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's also such a shift in the power dynamic of that because these guys, these two buffoons from Sega and Sony, kidnap these guys. And when they start explaining the games, they're playing, wow, this game's really cool. And then within that time, they're just like, we don't care if you kidnapped us. Fuck you. We're leaving. Oh, can I have the strategy guide? No, you could go buy your own. Fuck off. Nintendo. And that's kind of how it ends, roughly.
It's just like attitude all around.
Like, that was always an option. We could just, like, untie ourselves and walk out. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that got me, at the time, excited for Star Fox 64, and then playing it and just being like, first off, there was talking in 64 games, but that one had, like, was basically like full-on dialogue, full-on conversations throughout the whole level. So that totally like, whoa, what? This is actually like playing a movie. At the time, it felt like that, at least. And just kind of all the little intricacies of the characters and this and that, and that just became one of those games, just became so fun to just do marathons, try to speed run and try the different routes, just saying, oh, so there is multiple ways to go about this if you just go this direction, or you shoot all these targets, then that opens up this door over here, or something to that effect,
Mm-hmm.
This was going to be my number 2 as well. I'll put something in its place. But I played the shit out of this. And I actually, at one point in time, this is so weird that I did this, and I'm not really sure how I did it, but I recorded it with the VCR.
You could do that back in the day on certain things.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I learned that, when I was like, oh my gosh, I can record like video game footage. But then you're like, who's going to see this?
Yeah. It's like the early Twitch. You know what I mean? That's like the most 90s things you can do. I recorded myself playing Nintendo 64. It's like, oh my God. But I did. And I love this game. I was terrible. I'm not very good at video games anyway. Unless they're sports video games. It takes me a while to beat stuff. It really does. But God, I was so addicted to this one. And it was the playability over and over again. You just pick it up at any time and get really lost in it. And like you mentioned, that voiceover at the beginking too, it's so iconic.
Yeah, well, just it has some of like the best lines, like in all the stuff. Yeah, just even small things, but all kinds of stuff. Alien mothership approaching. Fox, that's one of ours.
Hey Einstein, I'm on your side.
Well, also the Independence Day looking level.
Yeah, that's what.
Yes, that was my favorite.
Well, that's the thing is there's so many great levels, so much good action in that thing. That game plays so smooth. I will actually say this. I think Star Fox 64 is the number one N64 game that holds up over time. Like, you can go back to that game, and it's like, it literally plays just as good as it ever did. There's like nothing like, unsmooth about it or anything like that, I mean, I think other games like Mario 64 and stuff still play pretty darn good. There might be that little bit of like, well, I can't control the camera like I'm used to nowadays, but Star Fox, that one's like, dude, that game is like as solid as all can be, like fantastic all the way around. Other than the fact that like if you're going to play marathons with it, you can't skip those ending credits on the 64 version. Yeah. The credits are like longer than the gameplay.
Well, it is actually that was a good thing about it because a single solitary game like a playthrough wouldn't take long at all. There's just all the different ways you can get there, which gave it so much replay value. And I don't want to backtrack too much back onto the voices things, but just like you said, some of the small things, like maybe they weren't even clever lines, just the way they said it, it's burned in my brain.
Yeah.
It's like, cocky little freak.
Yeah. Well, that's like, because there's that 3DS remake of Star Fox 64 that is really awesome. But the downfall is they weren't able to get every single voice actor back. So some of them are kind of lost. It's like Fox is the same, some of the others are the same, and so on like that. But it's like Peppy is like a different guy. And that really does, even though the guy's putting in like 110% effort doing that voiceover on the 3DS one. But since it's not the same, it's like there's just a little bit missing there. And just a couple of the other voiceovers and so on in it. Just, you know what I mean? It's like, that goes to show how well that like voiceovers is for like Star Fox. Because like I'm one of those people like in general, if it's like other Japanese games, like especially nowadays, like I turn the voiceovers off. I'm like, I don't want that on there. Like I even the Final Fantasy VII remake, I turned the voiceovers off. My game probably looks so weird to anybody like walking in because everybody's just got flappy mouths and like Nothing coming out of them. You know, but it's like, nope, I don't even want the Japanese voice track to ruin my like impersonation, or not impersonation, but my impression of Final Fantasy VII. You know, but on the other hand, Star Fox 64, those voiceovers, that really is like almost like a quarter of the experience.
That really makes the game. I mean, among just great gameplay, but that really stands out. In it.
Even the Slippy Frog's a punk ass bitch.
He is. Well, there's only like multiple times in that campaign where he's like, "I'll get him like Slippy, he'll just fuck it up," and then like, "Oh, and just like, no, not today. We can train the robot to fix the ship, right? Yeah, let's just let this happen."
He's Carl from Walking Dead. Just stay on the porch, Carl. They're like, no, I'm gonna. I got this.
And for some reason, Slippy's like in the later Star Fox games, Slippy's always there. It's just like, we didn't get rid of this guy yet. Like, no. But Fox, you love me, don't you?
Just big boot him off the ship, throw him a golden watch. We'll call it good.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
he's Screech from Saved by the Bell. You can't get rid of him.
Can't get rid of him.
I think it's also like
actually. Yeah, I was just gonna say. Wait a minute.
They got rid of Saved by the Bell. I was like, okay, we can do the reunion now.
Wasn't it something like his dad was the was one of the founding members of Star Fox, and like he did like So it's basically one of those things like, well, my dad was one of the founding members, and he's the one that paid for the ship. Like, fucking goddamn, it always comes back down to that.
It's literally like an Animal House type thing, like flounders, like a legacy, so they have to let him in.
Fucking Toad.
I have 15,000 marbles, please.
Man.
Yeah, Star Fox, one of the best ones. I guess if we continue up on the list, Wes, what's yours number 2?
Well, I was going to do Star Fox, so I'm going to take my honorable mention that I was going to put in there because I have several. And there's several I want to do here because there's one in particular that I want to talk about, but I'm scared nobody's going to put it on the list because it's so amazing. But we'll see what happens here. I'm going to go Wave Race 64.
Oh, there you go.
There's a good one too. That's one of those kind of intro level like 64 games when it kind of first came out.
There's also one of those ones that was like, it was huge on Nintendo 64, and they came out with one for the GameCube, and it was good, but it just wasn't the 64 one, you know?
There's something intrinsic. I don't know what it is. There's a certain charm to it that is just amazing. It's so playable, but man, it just looks so good back in the day. I think what it was is it's the first time I'd seen video games do water that well. I know it sounds like such a simple thing, but like not just the look of it, but you know, interacting with it.
Yeah.
It was just so interesting, and it looked so good, and then every level was so unique. It kind of was like Star Fox in the sense that sometimes on Nintendo 64 they're like, okay, let's see what we could do with these graphics and see. You know, they push it to the limit with some games, and it didn't look like a good Nintendo 64 game. But then some games were like, let's make a good-looking Nintendo 64 game. Yeah. And this was one of them. And they knew what they were doing. Like, how do we make it look good with what we have? And they killed it. And it's still – I played that recently, and it's still really, really fun.
I actually popped that one on, like, before we started this list, when I just did my little refresher course, I threw on some Wave Race 64. And that's that thing that, like, when Nintendo does, like, stuff like sports games and stuff, like, things that you don't really always picture Nintendo normally doing, it's like, they always knock it out of the park. It's like 1080. Like, that snowboarding game, that thing's fantastic, too. And it's just, like, one of those ones, first-party Nintendo stuff. They know their system in and out better than anybody else. They're going to dial in the specs. They're going to make the game look good, but they're always going to keep that fun factor super high. That's kind of what made Wave Race really good is, yeah, it was, like, graphics and just... there's a lot of these things that's like when you just saw stuff like this for the first time, it's just like, you know, maybe in the arcade you might have had one of those kind of like, you know, 3D racing games. I can't think of any like water games that I would have thought of that would have came before Wave Race 64. But I was trying to think of my arcade memory. I'm like, you know, even like Sega games and so on, they're all car racing ones and whatnot. But so it's like, you know, sort of seeing these things and just like getting that graphical experience and just like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm literally out there like on the waves, like I don't even need to go outside in real life anymore. I'm there. We're there, guys.
Cancel our trip to Fiji.
Yeah.
Wave Race 64.
Well, it's also 90s as fuck. I mean, it's super 90s. I mean, just jet skis. First of all, why are they not called motorcycles? That bothers me. But also, jet ski, like that, the colors, everything about it is just super, super 90s. And I think that's why I'm so nostalgic about it.
Only thing they're really missing is just like plaid shirts tied around their waist as they're riding on the jet skis with like Stuntsville Pilots or something playing in the background.
That's like literally, there's a game on like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis called California Games that is literally about the most 90s experience you can have. And it literally, the cover is like, like a girl in a bikini and a guy with like a flannel shirt, holding a skateboard. Like, you couldn't ask for anything more. And what California Games is, it's just random ass like extreme sports, like kind of like things. I think there's rollerblading in it, skateboarding, surfing, and hacky sacking.
I remember that one. Yeah, that was like, wasn't there one for that for like the Atari or something? It was like an Atari portable. It looked like a Game Gear.
Oh, the Lynx? Yeah. It's for the Lynx as well too.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Hacky sack.
That was always my thing. Is it's like you start off, you're like,
idea.
oh cool, I'm rollerblading, and then you're like, oh sweet, I'm surfing, and then all of a sudden it's like, am I literally hacky sacking? Oh, that's actually kind of cool in a weird way, but yeah. I don't. Now I feel like I'm kind of taking offense to it because it's called California Games, and I live in California.
For the rest of the world, California is just a giant beach in San Francisco.
Yeah, it can't be like there's that other one called California Rush on the N64 or whatever. I think it's kind of like a spin-off of Cruising USA, but just all California. And it's like I remember the very first time going through them, like I better be able to race in East California. Oh, good, there's a Yosemite level. Okay, I feel like it's not like one of those ones like I'm excluded.
This place exists.
Yeah, there we go. But no, Wave Race always a fun one, and so on. Where does that leave us at now? What are we at?
You're number 2.
Is my 2? It's Ryan's 2, right?
No.
You didn't go yet. I don't think.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? This sounds so weird. By just looking at the Skype screen, since we're kind of like flippy-floppy in the mirror world, we're like in a mirror race in Mario 64. So I'm watching it like if we were in an actual 3D realm, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Now I'm on the other side. Okay, well, if we're going with number 2, I'm going to go with one of the other games that I've always really enjoyed on the N64 quite a bit. And it's kind of almost like, I guess, a 2-in-1, because the second one is more of like an enhanced version, or like, I guess you would almost say like the expansion pack type one, but as Castlevania and Castlevania Legacy of Darkness.
Oh, all right.
And
that's actually... it's fitting for you because I know how much you love Castlevania.
Yeah, and I kid you not, like this Castlevania, I think is one of the best Castlevanias out there. I know that like this one sometimes gets kind of flack, but and I've never really understood exactly why, because we didn't have anything to like compare this to back then. Like, I mean, there was no Devil May Cry yet. There wasn't any of those other, wasn't like Ninja Gaiden, like the new ones or anything like that too. So it's like this was kind of like the first like, hey, here's like a full on 3D like action game. Taking the Castlevania, you can run around, Dracula's castle, Dracula's fortress, and so on, battle all the classic creatures. Like, I always thought it played pretty well too. I mean, people would kind of say it maybe had some camera issues and so on, but I feel like the 64 days before we had a second joystick, camera issue, they were just kind of there. I feel like you worked around it. I don't know. I think that camera issue thing came from people coming in sort of later on, but like that's never really bothered me too much. I don't know. Maybe I'm just used to that old style of gameplay.
You get used to it, yeah.
But I always thought that game played well. It was scary as all can be. In a sense, it gave almost sort of a survival horror kind of feel to the N64 that didn't have a ton of those kind of games anyways. That Castlevania 64 one I always thought super dialed in. Really fun.
That's also the one you turned into like a werewolf in that one, right?
On the Legacy of Darkness, that like adds 2 other characters, and that guy's the werewolf one on there.
Oh, okay.
So it's like really the only difference between the two is like the other one just sort of, the second one kind of had the expansion pack you could use. It had 2 other characters, had a couple extra more levels in it. Kind of dialed in just a little bit of the graphics, a little bit of like, the camera, just small like tweaks and so on. It lost a couple things. Like, I don't think this is the voiceovers, but I don't care. I don't like voiceovers anyways. So it wasn't Star Fox.
Works out.
Yeah, it all works out and so on. But no, I always think that's a really cool one. It's like you got to have an old school game appreciation to kind of probably jump into it. But if you can kind of get behind it and so on, That game's really fun.
I never played it.
Yeah, you got to put on the list.
Damn. There's so many. Y'all have named a lot that I didn't play. I thought I played more than I had until I did this episode.
Well, this is what, and it's a weird thing too, is because the 64 actually has probably one of the smallest catalogs out of all systems like out there. I mean, Dreamcast has like literally twice as many games as the N64 does, and the Dreamcast is only around for like a third of the time of the 64. So
that's crazy.
Well, I feel like even though you said smaller catalog, I feel like there's the 10 or 15 games everybody remembers and loves, and there's these weirder, more obscure games that a lot of people forgot about, like the Castlevania or like Body Harvest or
just everything on Spencer's list.
Force Gemini.
Yeah, no,
I was saying Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah,
but
I remember that one, and I played that one, but the other ones not as much.
Yeah, and that's just the kind of the interesting thing about the 64. There's not really a whole lot of games for it at the end of the day, but like it just has some real big heavy hitters and so on. I mean, and that's where I feel like that's what I want to do with my list, is make sure you kind of address those kind of like, the other games out there, the other kind of neat things. But this,
oh yeah.
But I guess this gets us to the big one, the big old number one.
Big old number one. I'm hoping you pick a particular game.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Even out of my list, there are games I probably like more than some of the ones that made on my list. Like there are other games I probably like more than like Jet Force Gemini or even Bomberman. But the thing is, it's just a lot of those games have been talked to death. So
yeah.
I felt like maybe it's, another game that I think's really worth talking about, but that's not this. This is another game that's been talked to death, and I'd be lying to myself if I didn't put at least 2 big Nintendo titles on here. And I already covered Star Fox, so now it's Super Smash Brothers.
Oh wow!
Well,
yeah.
Well, Smash Brothers was like the most amazing thing you kind of saw at the time. I mean, granted, like 3 years earlier, maybe only like 2 years earlier, Sega actually did their Super Smash Brothers kind of first, and I guess you could almost say SNK did even beforehand with King of Fighters. But the whole fact that like Nintendo comes around and is like, hey, here's a game that you can play as pretty much all of our big hitters. You got Samus in there, you got Yoshi, you got Mario, Luigi, you got Captain Falcon, the list goes on and so on. And they're going to all come together and they're going to battle it out, and there's going to be items and everything like this, and they're going to have, a stage for each, character and so on. And then also, the big unlockables of having like Ness from Earthbound and so on. But that game itself was really like one of the most magical moments. Like I will have to say though, when playing the game for the first time and you saw those 4 unlockables, who were you thinking those characters were going to be before you saw who they actually were?
Well, I didn't know who Ness was, so he was off the table.
Yeah.
I knew Jigglypuff was Jigglypuff. Captain Falcon, I figured out that was
I'm
Captain
not saying
Falcon.
no. Knowing who they are, who were you thinking they were going to be the unlockable characters?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know who Ness was, so I didn't know.
I'm thinking like before you unlock the characters, who were you thinking?
You see a silhouette, so it's kind of easy to narrow down.
Well, I guess that's kind of true. But I was thinking that like some of them, like I was basing it off more like the items and so on like that, because I remember that was the thing, and before like as a kid, and that almost like IPs and all that kind of stuff. I remember because in that game they have 007 items in there from Rare's Goldeneye and so on like that. So that was the thing I was thinking, is like, oh shit, James Bond's gonna be one of the unlockable characters in there. He's a Nintendo game now. And, it's like they got the proximity mines in there and everything, and then it's like, oh no, that wasn't the case.
There's probably a ROM hack somewhere with Pierce Brosnan as one of the playable characters and 64-bit.
Yeah.
Probably.
I remember just playing that game for the first time, like going to a friend's house. He was kind of the Eric Cartman of the group. Mm-hmm. And still a good time, though. Still a good time. And just like, oh my God. And as soon as I remember like a week later, it wasn't a holiday or anything, but there was some reason we were out of school in the middle of the week. There's some weird thing going on at the school, and they're just like, just send them fucking home for the day. So I remember in the middle of the week, I got called my friend over and I rented Super Smash Brothers, and I was explaining the game to him. Like, no, dude, no, that game can't be real. That can't be real. Like, no, you can play as like Captain Falcon and Mario, punch each other in the fucking face. You have lightsaber fights. Like, no, because you say it just sounds like a kid's fever dream, or like the closest thing to a kid would say. Like, in my game, this is where the Power Rangers team up with Banjo and Kazooie. Just some weird, like, just oddball. It's a lot more like. It's Nintendo. It's a lot more streamlined and it all fits together. But at the time, the idea of Mario and Link fighting, that was never going to happen. And now it's just, now it seems so tame compared to other games and like the series itself. But no, that game had so much replayability and people were playing it so much. I remember that day we had off school. That's all we did basically until like midnight, just playing that game.
Oh. No,
Good times.
That's the thing about Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Is like that, and just the N64 in general. Just like it really brought out the 4-player gameplay. Because, like, granted, like, on Super Nintendo, on NES, on Genesis, you could always buy the multi-tap. Generally, nobody owned that. And then I remember even, too, like, it bummed me out because I thought, like, as a kid, I'm like, oh, if I buy the multi-tap for Super Nintendo, well, then I could play, like, Turtles in Time 4 players and stuff, just like the arcade. No, not the case. It only seemed to work on, like, sports games and so on. So it was always kind of, like, a bit of a letdown right there, And then, like, but the N64, it's like, hey, you know what? No more multi-tap. It's built in. You can plug 4 controllers in. Just make sure you get, invite your non-cheap friends over who actually will bring a controller, and you're good to go. That kid comes over with the Sony PlayStation controller. You tell him to get the hell out of here.
Get the hell out of here with your communist garbage.
Yeah,
your kind's not welcome here.
It'd be like when that friend brought over his Atari joystick when you were trying to play Sega on the multi-tap. You're like, dude, you can't plug that in. And then he plugged it in and it worked. And you're like, oh, well, I guess he can, but he's only got one button. Son of a bitch.
Make good use of it.
But no, just that, and like I feel the Smash Brothers though was almost like the ultimate of those like multiplayer games. I mean, you had Mario Party, that's the other real big one, but and Mario Kart of course too. But Smash was the one that you could put those like endless hours into. You had all the variables you could kind of change up. You had the unlockables. I mean, at the time period, just even having 12 characters, that was still like 12 characters in fully 3D. I mean, come on, like.
Well, even at the time, amazing. Like, it was also. I still feel this way, and maybe it's meant to be kind of like the Street Fighter kind of, but Jigglypuff is such a weird choice to me, even to this day, for the first game. It's like we only have slots for 12 characters. And Pokemon is kind of the new kid on the block at this point, as far as Nintendo's concerned. It's also kind of like Pixar. What Pixar is to Disney is what Game Freak is to Nintendo to some extent. Not even really main Nintendo, really. So it's kind of like seeing this whole thing with like, wait, so Jigglypuff gets a spot, but not like Bowser or not
Peach?
Ganondorf or Peach? Yes, there's this weird thing about that, but at the same time, it's just like, it's kind of like now sort of like the Dan character, and people got really good with her, and now she's banned in some tournaments.
Yeah, well, because it's like they toned down Jigglypuff as time has gone on, too, which is kind of, like, stupid. Because I'm like, that's supposed to be the whole point of that character, is that the character is, like, kind of a slow character or so on, but it's just got that one, like, hardcore attack that, that kind of makes up for the fact that it's slow and flying and so on. But it is that thing, though, like, you got 12 characters, and you got 12 characters, and you got 149 other Pokemon to choose from other than Pikachu. You're going to Jigglypuff? And I mean, I don't remember, I think it's like that thing. They must have thought, like, one, Pokemon's so popular right now, we got to, like, take advantage of it. Two, we only got one female character in there, and most people don't know that's a female character. You know what I mean? Like, because think about it, like, at that time period, Samus still was kind of thought to be a guy. Like, I kid you not, when I first played the game, I literally thought that was the character from Body Harvest. Like, when I first turned it on, I was like, oh, they got the guy from Body Harvest? Oh, wait a second, that's Sam. Oh, that's that Metroid game. Oh, okay. Like, so. And really, if you didn't electrocute Samus and see that she was in a bikini, you would never know. And nowadays it'd be like, well, that could be a guy in a bikini. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that was the thing is they're like, you know what? We got to have the Pokemon character in there. We got to take advantage of this because who knows? This could go away at any moment. And two, we need another female character. Jigglypuff's popular with the girls. Throw her on there.
I could also see it being like maybe that was an early build of Kirby and make another go at it. Well, what should you do with this one? Make it look like Jigglypuff. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's what it is, but I can see that.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe that kind of thing. Because realistically, I will say, like, it seems, I mean, I know that that's kind of a classic thing in hindsight, just the way it kind of is, but that should have probably been Princess Peach. Really, out of every character in there, I mean, I would say something like Bowser, but since they have no bad guys in general in the first one, you might as well just stick to like all your good guy rosters. And I know they're kind of going with all heroes, but then again, Jigglypuff's not really the hero either. I don't even know if Jigglypuff's like the anti-hero. So I feel like Peach would have been the one to have. I think that would have been the one to really kind of even that roster out perfectly.
Very odd.
Game, but regardless of the weird choice of Jigglypuff, still just massive game. Had a huge impact on just that whole genre itself. Kind of, it wasn't the first one to do the whole like weird like 2D brawler with items. I don't think it was the first to do that, but I think it was the first one to really perfect it and do a really good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what came before that. Because the only thing I can think of that is kind of like in the similar is you got King of Fighters, but that's in a traditional fighting style, just combining just your 2D fighting games together of SNK, and then you have Sega's on Saturn, you have what's that one called? The one that combines, in a sense, Virtual Fighter with
I don't know what it's called, but I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I just draw a total blank on it. I own it.
For the placement of Sonic characters, they don't have Sonic.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's really goofy about it.
They have Bean and Bark from the fighting game. Only representation of Sonic. Like, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it kind of has that. It has like, but that one had Virtual Cop characters. It literally even had the Daytona USA car you could fight as. So that was like its sort of goofy character and whatnot in there. But so that one was it was Virtual Fighter, Fighting Vipers. I cannot think what that's called, but whatever. Have it, own it somewhere. Just, my old man brain's going away, but. Smash Brothers kind of solidifies that and almost kind of own that genre. Like, you know what I mean? Like, PlayStation came up their kind of Smash Brothers on the PS3, which I actually thought is actually a really cool game. I mean, granted, it could have had maybe a little bit stronger roster, but that's where, like, a second one would have came, or that game should have almost gotten its second life on PS4. They should have just re-released the special edition, same game, added, like, 4 new characters and everything like that, and I think that game could have... It just needed a little bit more time to simmer, and I just think most people came out and just Nintendo fans are like, PlayStation's trying to compete with Nintendo. They can't compete with that cock. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, so well, we lost all the Smash Brothers players because they're not going to play it. So, and Sony never cared about that in general, or the Sony fans in general don't care about it, so the game just kind of disappeared, but... It was a cool idea. Like, I don't know. I like the idea of just having, like, hey, let's just throw these characters together and have them be able to battle each other. I mean, like, why not? Like, there should be more of that in life.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry. There's the
Bandai one.
There what?
There's that Bandai one that has like Bomberman and Castlevania and Goku and.
Oh, not that one. That would be interesting though. No, I was gonna say there's the one. The whole thing with the PlayStation one though is like, okay, I get Jak and Daxter, I get Nathan Drake. I'm like, okay, Papa the Rapper, that's a weird deep cut. Okay, that's kind of like the Ice Climbers to Smash Brothers, so I get that. But then it just like, I don't know, Heavenly Sword, I guess.
Well, at that time period, that would have been like PS3's like real big like new IP. That game just didn't take off, but they were pushing that one hard.
Was that one that recent? I thought it came out like I thought it was a couple years down the line, or was it pretty recent then?
It would have been like right around that same time. Like we would have been like.
Yes, it was PS3. It wasn't PS4. So
yeah. This is not PS4 because that's what it needed to be on PS4 so it could kind of have a comeback. No, it's pretty old. But yeah, no, it does have kind of weird ones. Like, I mean, like some of them make sense. It's got like Sweet Tooth in there. It's got Kratos. I think the real big one that Sony, because Sony has the deep enough pockets, they should have just spent the cash. Is they should have got Crash and they should have got Lara Croft, because that, even though I know it's like they're not technically Sony characters, the general public thinks of those characters as being Sony kind of mascots, even though they have nothing to do with it. But you know what I mean? Like how expensive would it have been to go over to Universal and buy, get Crash for the game? I don't think wasn't like he was like a hard to get item at that point.
No.
He's coming back on now.
It's one of those ones. I think Sony just really like goes like, no, Crash isn't our fucking character. Get used to it, and like. You know what I mean? Like, they really just want to be like, no, we don't want anything to do with Crash. We never did, and you guys like him. That doesn't mean we like him.
Things will never be the same after that one Christmas party.
Yeah. Worst part, too, is the first Christmas party. And then he's still stuck around for 4 more games.
So, yeah, Smash Brothers.
Yeah. Not Sony Brothers, but
I enjoyed watching other people play it more than playing it myself, probably because I lost a lot. But
it can be infuriating if you're around a bunch of people who take it like seriously. I used to be like amazing at that game, and then you let a few months go by, you don't play it, then go play with a friend who plays it all the time. You're just like, I got to level back up.
Yeah. The nice thing about Smash Brothers, though, and that's almost like the same way that Mario Kart sort of is it kind of is one of those games that like almost anybody can kind of jump into it. It's not like if you jump into Street Fighter and you have somebody who's been playing Street Fighter for their entire life and then somebody who's never played it and it's just like totally unfair. Like just don't even bother even playing it. Like I've kind of like learned that when it comes to fighting games, it's almost like you got to seriously sit someone down and be like, I know you say you play this game, but do you seriously play this game? Because that's gonna be the biggest difference. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm gonna look like a dick if we start this game up. And I don't want to look like that, you know what I mean? But Smash Bros. Is that one that like somebody could be like fresh and somebody could be like hardcore, and whether you want to do it just like you could play on teams, or whether you just put all the items on, whether you put like a bunch of computer characters in, and so you can almost kind of make it so that like everyone can have a good time.
Some for everybody.
Unless you're just gonna be that dick friend, be like, no, we're playing, like no items, we play one-on-one, Final Destination, like then you can be that dick friend, and yeah.
Nobody likes that guy.
Nobody likes that guy.
No one does.
Yeah, fuck him.
Yeah, screw that guy. But Wes, what's your number one?
Well, I might lose y'all's interest for just a minute, but so I'll make mine quick. But the only thing I'm good at with video games, I play a lot of them, but I've only been ever really good at sports games. Mm-hmm. The Nintendo 64 was terrible for sports games. The football games sucked. The basketball games sucked.
What about Wayne Gretzky's hockey? That game's amazing.
That's my number one. That's my number one. That is one of the best sport games of all time.
That game is so good.
It's so fucking good.
I can't play other hockey games because of how much I like Wayne Gretzky's.
Yes. Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey might be the best sports game ever made.
You know what? And here's the thing: is like the only thing that I feel puts it in like competition. And it's the same company, but it's NBA Jam because they're all from Midway. So you got Blitz, you got Wayne Gretzky, you got NBA Jam. Like all those games, it's like I felt like Midway was like they almost sort of understood me as like they're like, you know what, like sports, you know what, they need a little bit of like razzle dazzle thrown in there. They need some like fire. They need a guy doing like 6 backflips before he jams it in. They need to put like add some more fights to hockey. You know what I mean? Like that's how it's gonna get it. Football, have the guy catch on fire as he's pushing people down. You know what I mean? It's like that to me, I felt like that Midway era of sports games I really like a lot. And I can go back to those ones like any day, especially that Wayne Gretzky's hockey. That game is so good.
That game, I played all 3 of the games you mentioned. I played NBA Jam, and on Super Nintendo, that might be the winner. And Blitz was okay, and football's my favorite sport, but something about hockey just worked best for that format that they were going with. And the crazy thing is if you turned off arcade mode, you can increase the size of the rink, like make it a legitimate hockey game. It was extremely playable, really fun. It was far superior to any other sports game that was on that console, even Blitz. Yeah. It just worked so much better. Hockey just worked the best for that. And my brother, when he found my old 64 and he gave it back to me, he's like, I'm giving you some of the games, but I'm keeping Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey. That was everybody's favorite. We played it all the time. That game is really, really damn good.
And plus, that's like one of those ones for like the 4-player multiplayer. Like that game is, I mean, you could have like some of the best parties just playing that game.
Oh my God, yeah.
I never played. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wes.
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, you could have great. It's a great friends game. It's like, hockey, Super Smash Brothers almost. It's designed for that. And very few sports games are really good with bringing in 4 players, or you know what I mean. It's really just 1v1 kind of thing. But this game was just, man, it's so playable.
I've actually never played that one, and I actually never played a hockey game on any console. And I like hockey. I don't really keep up with it all the time, but I do like hockey. But I've heard nothing but good things about this particular game. And the only like kind of going off what you guys were saying, and I know it was Midway that made them, but it makes sense. I remember hearing about NFL Blitz. I remember actually seeing an arcade cabinet of NFL Blitz at like the Round Table in San Jose. So it was like I remember it was a Green Bay Packers player on fire, but that's the thing about a lot of those games. Like, oh, okay, let's just add a little shine to them. And I just remember I never played it. I remember it looked fun, and that was coming from someone who wasn't into playing sports games. But these ones, I think because of the backflips and the guy catches on fire and all that, was enough to get my attention, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's such a bummer that the Midway doesn't exist to make these types anymore and so on. And granted, nobody else can make football games. That's almost like the main reason like why I've always stayed away from Madden. I hate the idea that only one company can make it. Like we used to have
anymore.
Oh, is that finally getting overturned? Because that was like one of those things like I felt like I need my 90s choices back again.
Well, what's happening is just to branch off for a second. In I think 2008 or 9, I can't remember what year it was, but 2K made a football game that was incredible.
Well, yeah, it's 2K had amazing stuff.
Yeah, they made it had I can't remember what year it was. It had Terrell Owens on the cover. I played the game, and it's still better than current Madden in terms of playability. It's just really, really good, and people mod it all the time and put today's rosters and uniforms on teams in that game because it's just so good. And right after that, Madden went and bought the exclusivity, but now 2K for the next 2 years can make football games, but they can't be simulation football games. But then after that, it's open again for them to make a competitor to Madden, which will be great. And it would be nice to see some fun games like this. I prefer the simulation games, but these games are really, really fun in their own way too. And they still exist, but not like NBA Jam or Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey or Blitz. It's just a special time, but that one's the best.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I still say it's a hard choice between that and NBA. NBA Jam's always kind of been as far as the sports games go, that one's as a childhood kind of favorite. You know what I mean? That just ties in with Space Jam and Michael Jordan and all that good stuff. But not like he's in that game, but Bill Clinton is instead, so it's okay.
Oh, shit. Right. I'm going to dunk on your ass. I swear to God I am. I swear I'm going to do
it. That's like one of you tends to be like, well, we don't have Michael Jordan, kids, but we got Bill Clinton.
Oh,
and they're like, oh, shit, well, that's actually kind of cool.
And Hillary. Yeah, Hillary, too, I think. I think you had both of them.
Did you? I didn't think you had Hillary. I didn't think there was... Maybe she was in there. But I know you also get Jazzy Jeff and Beastie Boys and all kinds of characters. But
Clinton's always the last one out of the locker room. You see him just adjusting his pants. Or, oh, fuck, all right, let's do this.
Shit.
One fucking cheerleader comes running out.
3 basketball players come out holding their ass, cheeks. Be like, oh, that was all that was in there.
She's on fire.
But no, it is kind of a bummer that there isn't those other kind of sports games. In a sense, there's alternative sports games, and it's that was such a great era when just Midway just kind of owned that section of it and just really did them well. And it's like, hey, everybody else can have their simulations. We're just going to have the ones that are going to be really fun. We're going to make these great kind of arcadey ones. It's going to be perfect for the N64. You're going to have the buds over, you know what I mean? And everybody can get together and just play the living daylights out of these games and just, have a good old time. No, Wayne Gretzky's Hockey, that's one of those games that's on the N64, I'd almost say if you were going to if you and your friends were going to get together and lock yourselves up in a cabin for the summertime, and you're one of those ones where you're we're going to do old school, we're going to take an N64, we're going to hang out at the lake and all kinds of stuff. I feel top 10, if you only had for some reason 10 games, you'd want to take that Wayne Gretzky's Hockey for sure.
100%.
It'd be it's such it goes in there for just one of those perfect party games, right up there with GoldenEye, Smash Brothers, though if you can find people to play GoldenEye with still, that's always the tough one, but.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, well, I guess that all leads up to my number one. And as I said with my list, I was going with, because technically, all the games that I chose, I would say are not really the top 5 totally best games on the N64. I just think that they were just those unique experiences for me, things that I really enjoyed that were different. Because at the end of the day, I mean, no specific order, but it's really Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye. Those are all the games, hands down, you can't beat those games no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like when you get those people nowadays that try to tell you that Ocarina of Time wasn't that good. I'm just like, fuck you. You weren't there. You weren't there. Don't you dare speak those words. Not that good. That's like one of those ones. That's like a 15-year-old kid comes out and says that kind of stuff, or a 20-year-old kid just be like, no, dude. You'll never understand. Like that's like one of those moments. Like you won't understand it. But no. What I'm going with, those games are always amazing. But as Ryan said, they're the ones that are talked about the most, and for good reason, because they are they stand the test of time. It's like Mario 64 is always that kind of game that game is a launch release. And it's also probably like one of the best games on the N64. Like how many other systems have a launch release that like literally their best game is like their day one game?
Not very often.
No, and nowadays people don't even really have launch release games anymore. They're mostly always like, well, this game was going to come out for PS4, but fuck it, throw it on PS5. Shit, it's coming out, or Nintendo even started pulling that too. They're like, well, we got this Zelda game. It's going to be our grand finale on GameCube. Shit, we got the Wii coming out. Throw some motion controls on it. Like, you know what? Fuck
yeah.
Mirror it. Yeah.
Yeah, mirror it. Yeah. Yeah. Person, sir, Link's left-handed. The Wii remote's in the wrong one. Fuck it. Just put the mirror mode on. Shit, you played Mario Kart before, right? But my number one game going in, if you're gonna round off your Smash Brothers party with some Wayne Gretzky's hockey, for me, the other really, really big game out there is Perfect Dark.
I knew you were going to go with this one.
Perfect Dark is the game that, I love the living daylights of it. And granted, okay, I'll say this. Goldeneye, because it's 007, and 007 is one of my favorite things ever, I know that that's really amazing, but I think overall, Perfect Dark just has so much content going on in that one singular game. I mean, beyond just, it is just a cool, original character, because I guess that's the thing. Rare's probably well, shit, we're going to lose that 007 license. We better create our own character. Well, you know what? Female heroes are popular right now. We'll make ours have that. It'll be kind of sci-fi, cyberpunk you know what I mean? She'll still be a spy, so it's still kind of 007, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think all those things work for me, just right out of the box. But then it's hey, one of the things that I always thought GoldenEye needed, I was like, you know what, man? What if GoldenEye was co-op? That would make that game so much more fun. I don't care. Just throw it in there. It could even be one of those ones where you do the original Halo style where you just hey, there's just two Master Chiefs running around. Don't question it. You know what I mean? But Perfect Dark gave you that. They're literally, it's you can play that entire game co-op the whole way through, split screen on an N64. So awesome. And then beyond that, they add in the multiplayer, and the multiplayer is filled to the brim of stuff. You get bots, because you didn't get bots on GoldenEye or anything like that. You got all kinds of these radical modes to play, the different guns, the specialties, and so on. They even put the challenge maps in there, too. So it's hey, if you and a buddy already played through the single-player campaign, already kind of played multiplayer, but you want something else to do, you got these challenge maps. Set yourselves up, go through those, battle it out, try to get the high score and all that stuff there. I mean, even just the bots in general, that's one of those features that they've taken that out of games in recent years, the last almost 10 plus years. But that used to be one of the best things to do. It's hey, if you and a buddy, it's you don't got anybody else to play with, but you're I still want to kind of play this multiplayer game, throw the computer players on. Why not? Mm-hmm. I don't know why they kind of got rid of that stuff, but Perfect Dark it had it all in there. It's almost that pushed the N64 to its complete limits.
Yeah. Probably the best. It might be the best game on the 64. I mean, obviously, Ocarina of Time and GoldenEye are more iconic, but I don't know, man. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah. It's just one of those. Well, and the thing too, what tops it off even more is I know this is not the N64, but that Xbox remake of it, it's one of those ones you take a game that already was, pushing that N64 to its limits, but then it's you just crystal clear that game up, make it smooth, but still the exact same N64 game in there. It's got all the elements and so on. Other than the fact they took Shigeru Miyamoto out of it, so you can't go around as Shigeru Miyamoto anymore shooting people. But you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
Does he wear a Mario hat or anything like that?
No, it's just Shigeru. It's literally just Shigeru Miyamoto you can play as.
I never played that game single player. I've only played it at friend's house.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of what I picked up from it was just kind of let's make another GoldenEye without the limitations of what the license will allow us to do and not do. And that seemed really awesome from it.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing too. Is it's like that game. They even increased the violence and so on. Because I remember one time, literally in about like 1999 or whatever, maybe going on 2000, I was going over to a buddy's house and whatnot, and his dad was driving us home and stuff, and he was just like going on this rant about like how like his kids talked him into buying all these violent games. It's just like, I can't believe you guys. You're always talking me into buying these things. I'm supposed to be a good parent here and so on. It's like, I just got you a game called Resident Evil Director's Cut. And it's like, I thought, okay, cool. They're toning it down for you guys. No, they're putting more stuff in there. And then you get that Perfect Dark game, and what they do, it's like, you're shooting people, and as you're shooting them, they're screaming bloody murder and running away from you. He's just going on this thing. And it was just kind of like at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, Dad, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. I just wanted you to know. I'm concerned.
But I'm already in the situation, so I got to keep doing it to be a cool dad. You're fucking welcome.
And I just remember, because that was the thing. It's just because that was the thing about Perfect Dark. You don't like those are the small things you kind of take for granted nowadays. But like that was like the first game that like the characters actually screamed back and yelled as you came in and told you like fucking bitch and so on. Well, they didn't say fucking, but they said bitch. You know, we were making it there. Because, you know, in Goldeneye, it's like, you kind of think about when you go back to Goldeneye, they don't say anything. So it's almost kind of like you're just shooting these, like, almost like creepy, like, computer, like, you know, Soviet soldiers everywhere and so on. But, like, in Perfect Dark, they could talk and, you know, and they could react and so on. They ran away from you as you chased them down and so on. They weren't just like, you know, Goldeneye, they just come after you like the Terminator and never stop.
Well, even when you've played Goldeneye, I know it's a different game, but the same developer. When you play Goldeneye, at the time, the bad guy seemed really smart. Like the idea of like, he's going to turn around and try and hit the alarm button. And sometimes you just wanted to fuck with them. You could hit the alarm button and wait by the room they're going to walk into and just unload. So I imagine Perfect Dark kind of had similar things, or at least improved upon it.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is it just kind of improves on everything that, you know, GoldenEye's already just pure amazing. I love that game so much, you know. But Perfect Dark, just like, you know, you take it, I mean, beyond, other than the 007 element, you know, it's just like, there's just so many neat little things added to that game. And I just felt like they gave you so much bang for your buck in that title. Like, they just don't generally make games like that anymore. Like, there's no way you would get a game that fully loaded without having to pay twice the price for, you know, the DLC included and so on.
Yeah, if I ever get an Xbox again, hopefully they still have the revamped, remastered version of Perfect Dark, so I finally play that game through.
Yeah, you can play it on Series X. You can play Perfect Dark on there as well. You can play it on your phone. Or
sweet.
It was like when they had the streaming and like, because that was the first thing. It's like, cool, they have the games on there, and then it was like, well, you know, it'd be really cool is they put those 360 games on there. I don't know what it is. It's like kind of like you know when you get like a new system, and the first thing you're like, hey, it plays old games. Well, let's see what that looks like. I mean, I kid you not, the first time that they had streaming on the computer, I was like, oh well, my Xbox is over there, back there behind me, but I want to test out this streaming is. I'm gonna load up some Perfect Dark. That's my test game. So it's like, yeah, it's just so cool to kind of have that still going. And hopefully there's supposed to be a new Perfect Dark. Microsoft says that, like, hey, they're going to bring it back. Hopefully they bring it back and just... It'd be nice if they kind of didn't try to be like other... Because that was kind of the downfall to Zero. It's not that Zero's a bad game, but it was trying to be...
It was a bad game.
It's not a bad game. It's just not... It's just not an amazing game. That's the thing. It
was mediocre. It was like very... I mean, for how much hype is built around Perfect Dark, it was a very by-the-numbers shooter.
Yeah, I mean, it's still fun, but it's like a B game when it should have been like a AAA game. Like, you know... And it's the downfall that a lot of companies sort of have is where they try to be other companies, and it's like, yo, people didn't like this game because it was other companies. They liked it because it's what it was. You know what I mean? Don't try to whatever everybody else did, throw that out the window almost and stick with what you know, or else you end up becoming kind of just like, oh, it's a Call of Duty clone, or oh, it's going to be a Halo clone, or it's going to be a Gears of War clone, or something like that. And not saying anything against those games, but those games, they work because they did their own unique thing and they stuck to that. They didn't try to be the other company.
Here's the thing about Perfect Dark Zero, because I didn't get that game. Because I'm like, oh, everyone loves the first one so much. Let me check this one out. And
I think I talked you into getting it because you had a 360. I'm like, dude, Ryan, you got a 360. Why don't you get some Perfect Dark Zero? Well, yeah, I was thinking about getting this other game that's probably going to be really good. Screw that, Ryan. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't care what you say. I thought the game sucked. It was functional. It was functional. Let me say that. It didn't stand out in any way to me, especially for how much built around it. But the thing is, I hate it. Like, and I know we're talking about good in N64 games, but the thing about Zero is there's a level that always stood out to me that fucking sucks. Because, like, I don't know where you suddenly have to do an escort mission, and like, this is Jonathan. He's the best guy we have, and he's like just some like white-haired bitch. Like, come on, John, follow me. I'm like, and I just gotta just keep this asshole alive, and he keeps running into rooms, getting shot or bazookaed. So I almost have to run ahead and kill everything to make it clear for this dumbass. So just like, what the fuck, you know? So that wasn't the only reason, but it was just kind of like a whatever game to me. But I remember playing multiplayer at your house and other friends' house of the original one, and being like, oh, this one's pretty awesome, even the remastered one.
Yeah, the remastered one's probably where it's at more than anything else. But yeah, Perfect Dark, always a good time. I like how our top ones, which kind of makes sense for the N64, but they're all just like the straight up ones that have great multiplayer in it, you know. Well, strong all the way around, but you know.
Older I get, multiplayer kind of trickles down on importance to me, but when you're younger, multiplayer is a big deal.
Well, the sad thing is, because when you get older, nobody comes over to your house anymore. Yeah.
I know we have this thing called internet, but at the same time,
it's
just
the same.
Like,
it's not the same. I don't know what it is. It's just like that gameplay. It just doesn't even. It's not. It's fun, but it's just not the same as getting all the buds over to the house and like having a good old time. And that's the thing is like that's why now I just kind of go like, oh, I guess I'll be the lonesome warrior now and play my single player games.
N64 captured camaraderie better than other systems have done it. Like it's there's this fine line between the camaraderie and competition, and you can have both. Mm-hmm. But it seems to lean always more towards competition, or just there's just not something as whimsical or magical about the way it's done now. But something about 64 captured that. I don't know what it was, but it was fun. It was really, really fun. And it multiplayer was really a special thing on that system.
Yeah. And not to keep it kind of on what you're talking about, the camaraderie. This isn't so much about 64, but kind of like that. I noticed this is when I first noticed that big dynamic shift. I mean, online gaming was already a thing by this point, but I remember when the Scott Pilgrim game came out, I remember watching an IGN review on it. And in the IGN review, this little fucking hipster was going on like, now the game is fun, this and that. It's a totally great, adequate game. But for some reason, they don't put in any online play, which like, okay, whatever. I mean, that's a reasonable thing. Maybe they could put on online play, no big deal. Which means if you want to play this with your friends, you have to go over to their house, breathe the same air as them, and then play 4-player. Just like, bitch, that's what it was for years. This game runs on nostalgia. It's all about fucking nostalgia. So it's like one of those things like, good, I don't want you coming to my fucking house, you little pussy.
Yeah, you saw that was like the super generation gap split right there. You're like, go fuck yourself. Because that's the thing is, in the long run, Scott Pilgrim added multiplayer for fucks like that. You know what I mean? Which they shouldn't get it. But I'll say, it's like, if you Scott Pilgrim, if you played that online, you're not getting the same experience as sitting down with your buddies and playing it. You know what I mean? It's just like the N64. And it's like, I always think of the N64, if there's that one system that like, say like, I don't know why, like sometimes I picture this in my head. It's like, well, what if you had this cool like cabin and you almost designed it like it was 1995 all over again? And it's like, you're going to have this cabin. You're going to have just like, all your friends over. You're going to go kind of almost like be like children once again. We're going to go hang out at the lake. We're going to, just go hiking and all this good stuff. But when we come back, what system are we going to have there to all sit around and play? You know what I mean? And we're going to keep it simple because we don't want to have too many choices in life. We like to keep it, there. N64 all the way. You take those like kind of about top 10 to 20 games and you're set. You're golden. It's like the perfect like kind of like vacation home kind of like system. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To just make it like the 90s. Like, where do you keep the Surge? Oh, it's right by the Deep Impact poster.
Yes, you got to have it like that.
I mean, isn't that kind of what I feel like? That's kind of what I'm doing with this room. I want to walk in this room and be like a time machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except my friends aren't here. But most of them, I don't want to be here. Most of the ones I hung out with in the 90s, I don't want to be here now anyway. So it kind of works out.
People change.
The 2000s was hard on them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the last time I saw one of my neighbor from when I was growing up in the 90s, I had the same neighbor that lived beside me for a decade. So from second grade to, actually it was longer than that. I was past high school when I moved. And the last time I saw him, it was like in a Lowe's Hardware, and I was like, "Hey, Randy, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh, hey, man, listen, it's Cash Money now. I go by Cash Money." And I was like, "Are you for real?" Yeah, man.
Can I just call you Randy? I know everybody else calls you Cash Money, but can I just call you Randy?
Yeah.
Let me actually. I was listening. I missed something in there. Did you just bump into him at Lowe's, or was he working at Lowe's?
No, I bumped into him at Lowe's.
Okay, because if you're working at Lowe's and you say, "Call me Cash Money,"
It says on his name tag,
I'm
like
not
his
sure if
little
you're living up
vest.
to your name, dude.
Dude, I grew up in a place called Troutman, North Carolina. It was tiny. It's close to Charlotte, but it's tiny. And I used to beat this kid's ass all the time. I wasn't an aggressive kid, but he would just do horrible things and like hurt my brother or like break my toys or something, and I beat him up. And he didn't learn his lesson. And so then he's like, after growing up with me, beating his ass all the time, you know what he did? He's like, "I'm going to move to Charlotte and join a gang."
So you set him on this path is what you're kind of...
Yeah, I did. So it's kind of my fault he was Cash Money. But I never started fights. I always just, he earned every single lick he got from me. I promise you that.
There were those kids that would just keep on trying to push and see how far they can go. Like, he hit me! Like, yeah, you broke my fucking gambit.
Yeah, exactly.
I had the Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters action figures. Mm-hmm. There was this Volkswagen Beetle that turned into a praying mantis.
Oh, I forgot about that one. I remember seeing, I want to say a friend had that. I totally forgot about that until now. The Beetle that turned into a praying mantis?
Yeah, it was a yellow Volkswagen Beetle turned into a praying mantis, and it was awesome. And Randy stepped on it because he's a bitch ass. So
you gotta lay the smack down.
I'm not calling him Cash Money. Fuck him. He's Randy.
Fuck Randy.
Randy. Yeah, fuck Randy. Man, I'll have to send this to him. I probably can find him on Facebook.
Look up Cash Money.
Yeah, way off topic for
Call me Cash Money.
It's off topic, but it's that thing. It's like it's finding those people to come on, because that's the hardest part about, like, that's almost like the downfall to like sort of video games nowadays. It's like there's like these great co-op experiences and multiplayer experiences, but you can't get anybody to come over to your house anymore to do it. Like, it's just one of those ones. People are either on a time schedule, or they got other things, or they got stuff that's supposed to be better to do, like that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh, fuck you too. I guess I'll just stay here and enjoy it by myself.
I thought shit was going to slow down with COVID.
I'm actually not even talking about COVID. That actually had nothing to do with COVID. Like,
oh, I know. I'm just saying. I thought things were going to go back to things were going to slow down a little bit, and people were going to go back to being a little bit more, just a little bit more analog in terms of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And things kind of scaling back a little bit and slowing down. Just life was. It wasn't just because we were kids. Life was just genuinely slower. Then too.
Yeah, I think that's just always sort of how it is. It's always going to speed up. Right. Well, I think that COVID, even though I know it kind of goes off topic, I think that actually set us in the literal digital age. It literally, like, I know that like in the 2000s, that's like the get-go of it, but I felt like that this kind of gave it for like all the tech companies are like, you know what? Shit, we've been waiting for this moment to happen. Let's fucking go balls to the wall, get this digital thing going. You know what I mean? Fuck that 4-player multiplayer on N64. Like, none of that shit anymore. Get them all online. Get them paying for the Xbox Live. Hey, Greg,
Xbox is coming out with a game that's just like a Fire Stick now. Their new system they were talking about the other day. It's just a Fire Stick that you can plug into your TV, and that's it.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I've been waiting for that kind of to sort of happen from like the big companies, because literally like the Xbox, like, they've had their streaming thing, and it's kind of been out for about the last maybe a little bit less than a year. But like literally, like, I just used my Xbox Live thing. I can boot up my phone anywhere and just start playing some Halo or Gears of War. I just take out my Bluetooth controller. If I have to wait like in a parking lot or something like that, like, I don't care. I can sit here and play some Halo. And don't get me wrong, I love all that kind of stuff. I think that stuff's amazing, and so on. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to play Halo in the parking lot while I'm waiting by myself. That's cool. But then I also want to play Halo at my house with like 4 to 16 players. Let's system link it or something like that, because that experience is so amazing, and you just can't get that, by playing online. Like that whole thing of like everybody in the same room and laughing and having a good old time, and there's always that one person who seems to be way better than everybody else, and you start kind of wondering that. You're like, who is this guy? Who is this wizard, Rain Man? Yeah, he seems so dumb and goofy, and then all of a sudden he grabbed a controller and
he's like Rain Man.
Yeah,
teach me your ways.
Yeah, exactly. There's just those ones like that, but that's just kind of the thing. It's just that I miss that time period of like just like hanging out and playing the multiplayer games, playing the co-op, and just that's almost like something that like you can't. There's only one way you can get that sort of video game playing is by being in the same room, and you have to have that allotted time. That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't get nowadays. Is, you know, you'll have people come on over and they'll be like, "I got like an hour," and be like,
what can we do in an hour?
Yeah, we'll watch the intro cutscene in the Metal Gear Solid 2. I don't know, like, like, you know what I mean? Like, you almost need that. Like, you don't have to necessarily spend the night, but you need that. Like, we need like that 8-hour marathon. You know what I mean? Like, where we just go balls to the wall. We'll just get a case of soda and just like, you know, have at it.
Yeah.
Do we want to cover our honorable mentions at all?
We should.
Oh, we should do that real quick. Definitely. What do you have, Ryan?
Let me just say, I'm just going to get these ones out of the way because I just think these ones are on everyone's honorable mentions. But Mario 64, of course, Mario Kart, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Yoshi's Story. There's more. I'm forgetting Goldeneye, of course. You know, there's more that I'm kind of forgetting at this moment. But I guess a weird one that I want to mention is a game called Buck Bumble, and it was this third-person game where you fly around. It wasn't like the most best assembled game, but something about it was just really fun. You're this bee, this little cyborg bee, and you were playing like in like a garden. Basically, the evil robot bugs are trying to take over this garden, and you're fighting them. And the game had one of the most recognizable theme songs in the world. It almost sounds like a parody of something. But I was actually, I don't think you're getting any trouble for this, but because it's, you know, really miscellaneous game.
You'd be surprised. If this was an Old Man Orange episode, we would get so red flagged in 2 seconds. I just know it.
You're the one that's gonna have to post it up. Do you mind if I play a second of it, or would you rather
you can play a second of it. In worst case scenario, I'll just go back in and edit it.
It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bump.
Imagine that little bee flying around blowing shit up.
Damn.
Yeah. So basically, just this little third-person flyer game where you're a bee killing shit, and whenever you land, he has like little bee movements. So he just like it takes forever to turn around. It's easier just to big fly and just kind of do like a U-turn and do that. You know?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there's more games that right now, for some reason, that's the one popping in my mind at the moment. So, you know, Barman Hero was fun too. There's a lot of good games, of course. Too many to name, but at the moment, there's the ones popping in my head. You know, Wave Race.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my other honorable mentions were already mentioned on your guys' list as well. Like
Same.
Well, it's kind of like one that I will mention. I know we kind of talked about it when we talked about WCW versus NWO, but the other one that was the really huge one was No Mercy. Like that was one of those ones that like I almost was going to have that on my list. I was almost going to take Podracer off and put that on there, but I really thought that Wes was going to have it. So I'm like, he'll cover it for me. And then, well, it kind of works out because, you know, the WCW versus NWO, they're all a similar developer. But No Mercy, that was always a humongous one. Put a lot of hours into that.
And it added elements.
Yeah, it was because those games just stacked on each other. You know, it's almost kind of, you know, that WrestleMania 2000 and so on. Just, you know, tons of fun, just customizable to the max, unlockable, story mode. You could bust somebody through a pool table in that one. I don't think I've ever seen that in any other wrestling game since then.
No. That game was all those games were super playable. That was probably the peak of those games.
It's that one, and I know it's on PlayStation, but that and SmackDown 2. That to me is like the golden era of like, you know, wrestling video games. But other than that, though, another one that was a humongous thing, impacted me as a kid, was Turok.
Oh, Turok! Yeah,
I knew you were going to mention that because you mentioned it a few times. I was waiting for you to bring up Turok.
And Turok, like the whole series, but especially the first one, was just one of those ones. I guess because like, you know, that was one of the first games I remember seeing on an N64. Other than like, you know, like Walmart and whatnot, where you see Mario 64. And you see Star Fox, and you see like the big Nintendo ones. It was like kind of going to a buddy's house when he invites you over and be like, "Hey, I got an N64," and you're like, "Oh, sweet, I got a Sega Genesis. You must be living high class." And I remember just playing Turok, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like Jurassic Park, but you know, there's dinosaurs and there's like all these kind of like soldiers and stuff, and there's this Native American dude running around killing people and whatnot, and it's violent, and there's all kinds of cool weapons, and the theme song is great because it's just like that drum beat going dun 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 dun. You know?
I am Turok.
Yeah, I am Turok. and all the kind of cool stuff about it. Like that was almost like it wasn't the first person shooter I played. I played Wolfenstein and Catacombs and things like that beforehand. But I remember that one being like that was a huge step up from those PC ones that I played before.
That was a good one. I only have one because we've already named, like, obviously Ocarina of Time was on there. I played the shit out of that. It was amazing. Revolutionary game. Goldeneye. Who didn't play the shit out of Goldeneye in the 90s? I mean, that would, if realistically, that might be my number one. But I've been kind of naming the sports games and different stuff. So I got one more right here.
The Beetle Adventures?
Beetle Adventure Racing, man. That game was fun as shit, let me tell you. It was really, really good. And there's this trippy ass, like psychedelic level. If you like, you have to earn it, I think. You can't just, it's not like one of the stock levels. You have to, I think you have to almost beat the game to get it. And damn, it was so crazy. It looked so good, but the shortcuts in this game were just ridiculous. Like you're in a snow level, and you go off the road, and you go into a cave, and there's a fucking spaceship in there. Why? Because fun. Yeah. And then you're on the beach level, and you go through the jungle, and all of a sudden the T-Rex from Jurassic Park breaks out and tries to eat you, and then it was so ridiculous. But it was actually a good racing game too. It was one of the better racing games that was on the N64.
And it's all Volkswagens. That's the cool part.
Yes. Oh yeah, which is also 90s as hell. That's almost even more 90s than the jet skis, honestly. So if we're gonna bring these back, should you?
I kind of miss when there's just like it's one car. Like I have a game for Xbox Original that's literally just the Volvo, like driving up. It's like like what every kid on their Xbox wants is the Volvo car simulator.
We got the Jetta simulator if you want that one.
Yeah. It's Volvo. Is it though? It's Volvo. But are you sure it's Volvo?
See, because at least Volkswagen, the Beetle, that's kind of hip. Like I mean, really, the Beetle's a very that's a 90s moment in time anyways. 90s into 2000s, but that car right there really kind of defines an era. But I do have one more other, before we kind of wrap it up, I guess. I do have one more game that I definitely will say. I guess you could say one or two, but this is one that I actually discovered a lot later. And I don't know, I wish I would have played it earlier, but sometimes there's something special about when you discover things later in life, because it almost gives you transportation back in time, and it's fresh, and it's not like you're not just running on nostalgia as much anymore. You're like, oh, it's like almost gonna have this brand new experience, but just today. But was Pokemon Puzzle League. Now this sounds like such a strange one, because I remember as a kid I looked at them like, $70 for like a puzzle game? Yeah, right. I'll get something else. So I didn't think anything of it, but I picked this game up maybe 6 years ago or 5 years ago or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this puzzle game is so much fun. Like this thing is so dialed in. Like I was getting people coming on over, but like, dude, you gotta play some Pokemon Puzzle League. Give it 2 matches and you'll get it. And it's so sick. And then to top it off, the soundtrack to it is literally to be a master Pokemon soundtrack music over it. So you have that. It's got all the themes of the cartoon show and so on. I love the living daylights out of that thing. And it's as I said, I bypassed it as a kid. Just arms crossed, hat backwards. Not my Pokemon game yet. More I think it was just I'm not paying $70 for a puzzle game, but
exactly.
I remember renting it and having a lot of fun with it. I remember being something kind of I think it was more than aesthetic. I want to say every character you could choose to play as, they had one of 3 Pokemon to choose, and it was the rock, paper, scissors thing. You could still win with a weaker one, or the weaker correspondent, I think. But it would just be a little harder. Am I right? Or I thought there was something.
I think there is something like that. It does add a little bit to it, just a little bit of diversion. And so,
so if you have a water guy going against a fire guy, it's going to be easier, and et cetera, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, something kind of like that, But yeah, it's just got that kind of elements. I did learn where that game originally came from, because on Switch, about 6 months ago on their Nintendo's Super Nintendo selection, they put because it's only in Japan only, but there was one on Super Nintendo that's that format. So it's it's kind of like a Puyo Puyo Pop, where it starts off one way, and then they sort of sell it with Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or Kirby's Avalanche and so on. But that, and then I'm just going to tie this in real quick, Dr. Mario 64. That's the other one that That I played Dr. Mario on NES, but like I really got into Dr. Mario like hardcore on the 64 one. So much so that me and my buddy Cisco were playing it. Like we'd play it like every night before we went to bed. Like we just have like like let's play for like 30 minutes. We'll just have big fat tournaments. That I started dreaming of pills falling, and all I thought about was like I remember they talked about that like people that played Tetris a bunch, that they'd start dreaming at nighttime of solving Tetris puzzles. I'm like, well, now I'm dreaming of drugs falling in the air and Dr. Mario music playing as I like line them up so I can beat Cisco the next day.
Now I want the AMC like drama where Mario's like a drug dealer selling pills out of the back of a van. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I want that too. Actually, that would be really interesting. That might be the sequel to Super Mario Brothers, the movie. Actually,
it might be. Why not?
Yeah.
The Dr. Mario one.
Last thing I'll say is bringing up the Dr. Mario. My mom, first of all, she played Tetris and Dr. Mario. She didn't play a whole lot of games, but she played those. And she would beat anybody's ass. And Tetris maybe, but Dr. Mario definitely. She was so good at Dr. Mario and Kirby's Avalanche. She played that one too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I almost bought her a Switch the other day because she's been in and out of the hospital a little bit. And I was like, man, I think I might buy her a Switch just so she could play. You
should get her. There's the Puyo Puyo versus Tetris on Switch. And because that's the same thing as Kirby's Avalanche. Or wait.
Oh.
Yeah, Kirby's Avalanche. I was again that confused with Wario's Woods. But yeah, so that's the original game, what it's called, and so on. But that one, it mixes, so you can play that style, and you can play Tetris, and you can combine them together and battle against each other. Like,
oh my gosh!
Like, there's a second one out right now. I haven't bought that, but I had the original one because it was like the launch release on the Switch. I'm like, dude, Puyo Puyo, I love. That's my favorite of all like the puzzle games.
You just need to zoom on there for her, and she'd go crazy. She used to play the shit out of that. But anyway, that was fun. Both nights were fun.
Yeah. We have a lot of content here. But I feel like that's almost how you're going to have it when you think back on nostalgic episodes. You're just gonna it's going to lead to multiple topics and things that remind you of. It's like almost that thing. You think of a game, but then you think of a moment and you think of a time and like what else was around and so on. And next thing you know, you've led yourself into a journey far, far away.
But that's what we want. That's what we want to happen. This is probably like. We don't know this, but this is probably therapy because we're like, wow, we're living in 2021 and this year blows. Like the 90s. Nah, that's not entirely true. It's just a little bit true. But anyway, Ryan, thanks for being back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you've logged a lot of hours. I mean, so you're welcome on anytime.
I would love to come back on. Love to get you on Old Man Orange again too.
Yeah, man, definitely. Real quick, Spencer, any plugs or anything? Well, obviously, Ryan, sorry, you have your Octorock Talk and a few other things that you're doing, right?
Yeah, I am. Other than Old Man Orange with Spencer, I have another show that's a little newer called Octorock Talk. Only 19 episodes in at this moment, but yeah, it's chugging along. I'm finally got it on a regular schedule. It used to be every other week, and now it's set to more of a every Monday late afternoon is when it posts, or early afternoon, like around 1 or 2.
There you go.
Beyond that, you can always go to oldmanorange.com. We find Old Man Orange Podcast, Pizza Boys comics, older animations and videos that we've done, and kind of the easy one-stop shop to get to all those fun places.
One-stop shop. Yeah, well, that's it, y'all. I hope we do more of these episodes. And like I said, they're not going to be top fives every time. They're going to be a little bit different format every time we do this stuff. And I've got all kinds of cool stuff lined up. Can't wait to do the mall episode. Really want to do that kind of stuff. Some 90s NBA, different things like that. So a lot of reminiscing to do. But anyway, thanks for listening to Via VHS. We're on all your podcatchers if you're listening or watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcatchers, you can find us on YouTube as well. And yeah, that's it. So anyway, thanks for listening. Y'all have a good one. And Via VHS is out.